Okay, everyone can see my report. This is basically from that last meeting. The last month has been actually pretty hectic. Meeting with Ryan with regards to discussing CPIC business. We did a lot of outreach to fill vacancies. So speaking to parents through the phone and online and through email, answering questions. Again, we have 2 new members here tonight, and I think there's a couple of parents that are showing interest. So hopefully by our next meeting, we can have a few more. So that was a lot of work. Thank you to Ryan for putting out the outreach as well. We had our AFL application out there. So again, a lot of outreach with parents and working with communications to get the message out. And working with our CSPCs and principals, I did send out a letter to all of them to let them know about the positions and to get it out to the community. So again, you could get a number of candidates. Working with our webmaster to keep our webpage updated, we made some changes, and again, it's seamless working with our webmaster. Even for this evening's meeting, we had to make some quick changes, and they're right on point. So we attended the Snowball Gala on December the 1st, right? So we had a table there. A bunch of us went out. We had a really good time. I forgot to bring the photos from that night. Oh, we took all the pictures. I'll bring them next time. We took our group pictures. We have a bunch. Chaired the AFL TCDSB Paramember Nomination Subcommittee on the 5th. I was part of the AFL application process. And again, I'm on social media promoting the EFL position and then tweeting whenever there's business for us. We actually got a shout out from Angel Foundation on Thankful Thursday, right, for our participation in the Snowball Gala. So that was very nice of them. Reviewed board agendas, see what's going on, and then we did November's minutes and December's agenda. And I received the resignation of Nadia, our Ward 9 representative. So we already have a resignation. She missed the inaugural meeting, the parent, and then reached out to me. We chatted a little. She felt that not a good time for her to commit. That was my month in a nutshell.
I'll move to receive the report.
Seconder. And opposed? Okay, so seeing none, that carries. Financial. Financial. Okay, so Bess is running late, so I'm gonna do the financial report. So last meeting, we were told our opening balance, which was 105,302.03. We've had 2 transactions go through since then. Printing and supplies of 93.75. And then sponsorship, again, that was the AFL gala. So you'll see the 2 line items at the bottom. So our closing balance at the end of November is 103,458.28. Everyone been provided their expense form to put in their mileage or so we covered expenses on the orientation night. I was going to speak to it a little bit more this evening. So we're going to have an electronic form. Gus has created an electronic form. He's going to actually email it out later on tonight after the meeting There'll be two forms. There'll be one for mileage and there'll be one for expenses. And you'll basically just follow the form step by step and answer the questions, and it will basically create a line that he will then populate onto a requisition form. Complete that. Okay. Now, if there's any questions and then when you're doing the Microsoft form as well, you'll be able to upload. I know some of you have been sending me invoices, but you got to send the treasurer the invoices. So you'll be able to upload those invoices and he'll be able to apply them to that expense form. If there's any questions again, from either way, if he has questions, he'll send you. But if anyone has questions regarding expenses, please reach out to both myself or Gus or Jen, and we can clarify. But again, the expenses we're looking most of the putting in for is mileage, so to and from from the CC to home to CC, CC to home. I know there's some of us that use Uber or public transit. Again, that'll fall in the expense. So you'll be using the other form and then uploading whatever receipts you have for that transportation cost. Okay.
For the AFL tower, can we claim the mileage for that too?
Yes.
And how many people did the 1750 cover?
So the 1750 was for a sponsorship table.
Okay.
Right. So, and it was 10 seats. We did have 10 for the evening, but our 10th person kind of got derailed and didn't make it. So we were 9 at the table. If you notice that night, they had the sponsorships around the screens, they were flashing. So we did see CPIC. And again, I mentioned earlier during my chair report that we got a shout out on Thursday from them as well. We purchased a table as a sponsorship.
And this is the first time we did this gala?
This is the first time we did this gala. Yeah. We were looking for an opportunity. I know myself and Jen have had this conversation kind of before a couple months ago as we were trying to get into this new school year, and we thought we wanted to do something outside of this room.
Yeah.
So that opportunity kind of came forward, and again, us already working closely with the AFL, with the parent member piece, and the gala being again. And all the money raised goes again back into our board. It kind of it was a perfect fit. So I'm hopeful for those of you who came that night, I hope you enjoyed yourselves.
It's fantastic.
It was a good time. We got a couple of good pictures. So put those in the annual report. Okay. Okay. There's no other questions. I'll receive the report. John, thank you. Second. Brian. Anyone opposed? Okay, seeing none, that's received. Thank you. Okay, so we're gonna move on to our first presentation of the meeting. So Superintendent Roy Fernandez, Superintendent of Education, Indigenous Education, Equity, and Community Relations. So I'm gonna stop my share. Sharing permission. Oh, 1 second. Yeah, it's working out. Thank you.
All right, so good evening, everyone. I really want to thank both Superintendent Peterson as well as Chair Joe for allowing me to come talk to you tonight. The intent was this presentation was given to our Education Council. So that's actually in the same room, all the superintendents, director, associate director, I want to say last maybe October. And so at that time, we thought it might be something valuable for CPIC to see as well. When this presentation happens in the schools, elementary students, grades 7 and 8, oftentimes parents will have questions as well. So knowing what an important organization you are, we figured it might be nice to have a little here. A couple of FYIs off the start. So first one, presentations are only done at grades 7, 8, and up. The curriculum is pretty clear about when certain things are discussed at different times. That was one of the questions someone had asked, and thank you those who sent. I know I'm going to try and keep myself to 30 minutes. This presentation sometimes takes an hour, so I will speak very fastly. But if I don't get things in and if I don't answer any questions, please do email me after. You'll always get a response from me on this. That had been one of the questions. What age do you start? So this presentation in particular, grades 7, 8, and up definitely. There's a letter that goes home to parents as per there's a ministry PPM 162. Anytime anything around the theme 3 in Fully Live is discussed, letter goes home to parents informing of that, parents being the primary educator. And as mentioned, this is presented to Education Council as well as to all principals. just for them to be aware of the material that's happening within the schools. Only other FYI. Okay, so our equity action plan was received by the board last March, end of March. 3 strands in particular: Indigenous education, dismantling anti-Black racism, and support for the 2S LGBTQ+ community. And when I often say I want to give presentations in schools to students or to staff, to make sure people understand these 3 strands were chosen intentionally. And at the same point, I say, okay, well, I don't identify with any of these 3 strands. Does that mean I'm not important within this plan? Absolutely not. It means anything that happens to improve conditions for any of these 3 groups is going to improve conditions for everyone within our board. And that's always the goal. So for the 2S LGBTQ+ community strategy, 3 areas: professional learning for staff, representation in schools and curriculum, which is where this one fits in, as well as the safety, the mental health and well-being of students. So that's kind of the pre. This is where the first slide starts within the student presentation. And I always tell the students, as an educator, to me, it's always about the big ideas. And so the big ideas we share: step 1, we acknowledge in this Catholic school, God created everyone who is in this room right now. But the second one, almost more importantly, God loves everyone equally. And I say to the students at that point, you might say, yeah, it's obvious, I get it. And we say, you got to live it. You got to live this idea. Jesus's mission on earth, a lot of times the question that comes is, how is this discussed within a Catholic school? And I'd kind of put to you, how can it not? Jesus's mission, if we think about what it was, if we think in the New Testament, who did Jesus sit with? Zacchaeus, who no one wanted to be around, tax collector. Who did Jesus talk to? The woman at the well, who people kind of shunned and put to the side. Who did Jesus not judge? The woman who the Pharisees wanted stoned. And that beautiful line of let he or she who's without sin cast the first stone. We don't equate sin with 2S LGBTQ+, because students sometimes will say this is a sin. And our message is always, how much did Jesus love us? This much. That's how much. And so what we say to them is, if God can welcome all, if Jesus can welcome all, just like our virtual hospitality in September, that's important for us to do the same thing. Somewhere today, a kid got up in the morning in their home and probably didn't feel too good going to school because they knew at home they can't be who they feel they should be. Then they go to school and sometimes they get made fun of by other kids there. And this is a group that has the highest suicidal ideation rate of any group. Statistics show us that throughout. So the goal of this sort of presentation, it's plain and simple, just make sure that kids understand in the school, our goal as Christians, our goal as Catholics is to welcome everyone. So that's how we kind of start off. This slide to 6, the next couple slides, they're not in the actual presentation, but I wanted you to know, just like we gave you the pre-survey, give it to students as well. And so the questions, just 3 simple ones that are asked. They put their name and grade, not because we're going to read it out loud who they are, but just in case we had to follow up. What questions do they have about 2S LGBTQ+ or gender identity? And is there anything we should consider before the presentation? Those are the 2 questions I pre-survey kids with. I want to tell you, as I tell anyone, the nature of the responses has changed greatly from February till June. We see what the climate is right now. At the start, the questions were very much along the lines of maybe what does the 2 stand for? What does the 2S stand for? Or what is the any of the different parts of the acronym? Now I'm getting more comments like, I know it's being blocked at the bottom there. No, you won't see it, but the last one that's there, oh, I'm sorry, you can't see it. I'm like closed captioning again. Isn't it directly in the Bible to not support this? And we're in a Catholic school. It's really important to acknowledge, and it's okay to acknowledge it, even within our room here. There might be some that say, yeah, I don't think this should be, I don't maybe necessarily believe in this idea or think this should have been in the equity action plan. And that's fine. Everyone's opinions are respected. But when I make sure the kids here and staff and anyone I present to, in the end, Catholicity just calls on us just to welcome. That's it. Not to agree, not to kind of promote, because it's never been about that. It's about making sure every kid that walks into our school feels welcome. Because that's what Christ does. That's what Jesus does. And that's kind of our goal. This other one's always interesting. I've had a number of kids that will say, you're going to get kids laughing in this. They're going to be immature. They're not going to handle it well. Hasn't happened yet. Hasn't happened yet. Maybe it'll happen with you. I'm not sure. But not yet. It's happened. Everyone, generally, it's respectful. And that's our Catholic school system, where kids understand that, look, this topic's being presented. You still might not agree with it, but it's something we're going to have the conversation about. I volunteer for Kids Helpful. So normally what I'll do is Kids Helpful, and this is directly from them. I'll bring up the definitions for kids to discuss. Two-Spirited is the one I find most interesting, and kids oftentimes don't know that. And the story is that Indigenous people oftentimes revered two-spirited people. And two-spirited people were considered to have both male and female within them. And they revered them because they felt they have that extra wisdom. Now, as often happens, we found over time, after the history of how colonialism and anything else has gone now, a lot of times now two-spirited people are not as welcome within Indigenous culture at times. And just it's an interesting commentary on society. First thing I showed them, I'm hoping the sound will work. I know I have to yell here if it doesn't. Oh, sorry, my sound is up here. It's a play done by Rosny Theatre. And what I show them, it's a brief, probably 3-minute clip that just, it ties in so well, I think, to what kids might be feeling in school. And the question I asked the kids before I show it, I want you to just consider how each character is feeling in this video. So I'm hoping it will work. Let's give it a shot. So Miguel, I'm not getting sound. Should I put my sound on from this end or? Just want to stop for a sec. I'm going to reshare and see, make sure I shared my sound at the start. So on a sec. Go back and share. Okay, so I'm going to stop my share. I'm going to reshare just in case I didn't share my sound. All right, so going back in. Let's see if this works better. Okay, got it. It's kind of soft.
It's just always been there. There wasn't one big moment. It was always there. I knew it. I could feel it.
So you really chopped it all off?
I think it looks better like this.
Better? It was so pretty.
I don't want to look pretty.
Well, you definitely achieved that.
Sharon.
So what? I'm supposed to call you Finn now?
Yeah,
Is that what Mom and Dad said?
that's what I'm saying.
But school's about to start.
So I just want to try resharing one more time. So I really would like you to hear it. Miguel's got a quick solution.
Yeah.
Good.
Good. Why?
It would confuse them.
We had a copy of this.
Doesn't work after this last time, we'll just skip it. So I want to take your time, but it's a really nice, powerful video to kind of show you.
Candy Crush, and I'll have to always talk about how all of a sudden my sister's become my brother now and telling everyone we have a weird family.
But I did it.
What's next? You gonna call Grandma and tell her? Maybe I should just Snapchat she's a boy now and tell the world, since you obviously don't want to keep your mouth shut.
Holly! I can't be myself at school. Well, neither can I, not exactly. You can not do ballet at school. I can't not be a boy. You don't get it, do you?
Why is this so easy for you?
The better question is, why is this so hard for you?
What am I missing?
You're missing that he's our kid. And it's our job to make this easier for him. So, Finn, are we gonna go throw the ball around in the backyard? What? Just some father-son bonding time. If that's what you want to do, just the boys. I've never seen you throw a ball around. So, what did we do? We Googled it. It's not like we didn't know about transgender, but...
Until the name thing and the hair incident, I didn't think it applied to our family.
It's not an incident, Sharon. I think it's part of his gender presentation.
I am the proud mother of a transgender son, and I am hoping that in sharing this with you, you can help become part of the network of adults who will make him feel safe and loved every day.
you didn't get a chance to hear it properly, I'm really going to suggest at some point, just Google it yourself. You can go on to YouTube. It's called Ladies and Gentlemen, Boys and Girls by Rosalie Theater. And just a couple of things from it. The line at the start where the sister is saying, have you told anyone at school? No? Good. Why? Because it confused everyone. Imagine that struggle that kids are going through, especially within their own family. Maybe if someone identifies a certain way, you broke the rules. You shouldn't be doing this. And the line as a parent, as a father that gets to me, and both my kids are in university now, but I still tell them, always talk to me. Talk to me about anything that's going on in your lives. And when the father and the mother are having that conversation, why is this so easy for you? No, why is it so hard for you? It's our kid, and it's our job to love him. So it's such a beautiful line. And what we say to our educators when this is done, someone had also asked a question, are staff receiving a professional development? Yeah, staff do. When I show them this video, it's the same conversation. It's our job to show love for the students within our care. That's it. It's not about saying, yes, I agree with this way of living, or no, you shouldn't do this. Just loving them, making them know they're safe at school. When we talk about student achievement, how are kids going to learn best? When they feel comfortable at school, when they feel that they're not being shunned or mocked or made fun of or any of those things. So if any of that little piece interests you, I'm going to tell you that March 19th, we are actually bringing Rosalie Theater to Cardinal Carter, which is just across the street here, to do an educator preview. So if any of you would wanted to come for that, please, again, just email me. I'll make sure I kind of reserve a seat for you. I'm going to keep going into the next one. I'm going to skip some of the videos again, just because I know our sound is not ideal, but I'll tell you about them when they come. Our leader of the church, Pope Francis. This line, I think, is such a beautiful line that I share with students. Let us not soundproof our hearts. Let us not remain barricaded in our certainties. Too often, if we are in certainties, then we're closed and we're not really hearing each other. And the line I like even better that I added in, Dr. Brown spoke to this line at the director's annual meeting at the start of the year. And I told him, I'm going to quote you. He says, yeah, absolutely. He quoted this line from Pope Francis. In the church, there's room for everyone. When the leader of your church says this and the director of education says this as well, this is how we try to help staff and students understand everyone's welcome. That's it. The message is simple, straightforward. This is a line by Harvey Milk, and his line was simply, all young people, regardless of sexual orientation or identity, deserve a safe and supportive environment in which to achieve their full potential. Now, what I didn't know before I started, and I'm not going to show this video, as I don't know if the sound will be good enough, but the story of the Pride flag, it's a beautiful story. It's called Pride, and it's about how the Pride flag came about. And Harvey Milk was the one who came up with this flag. And he just wanted a symbol, a sign for people that they could kind of just feel safe and feel welcomed again. And Harvey Milk ended up being assassinated. And the story I talked to the students about it, isn't it interesting how when we look at people in our world and how they're treated, Harvey Milk wanted to spread a message of love, and people decided that he should die for that. Mahatma Gandhi, my parents being from India, wanted to spread a message of peace, and he was assassinated for that. Martin Luther King, a message of peace and welcoming, he was killed. And then the ultimate example, Jesus Christ came to talk about how we can love and welcome everyone, and for that he was crucified. And it's something I tell students, we got to consider how the way we bring things. Hatred breeds, hatred just breeds, it creates just bad feelings for everyone. And it's something I tell our students and our staff, we got to move beyond this. We got to move to the point that if we're talking about Catholicity again, how do we welcome all? So I'm going to skip that one. But again, it's a good one to watch. This one is the one, a lot of the slides that come before this, and again, I'm moving quite quickly as I speak to you. Students might not have a lot to say. They're kind of listening. This one, students always tend to participate in, and it's such an important conversation to have. We talk gender stereotypes, and we talk about some of the everyday stereotypes that are there. So we talk about clothing. The idea, some of you have probably heard of Pink Shirt Day. Well, Pink Shirt Day came about because a boy came to school wearing pink, and he was bullied and made fun of. And so high school kids within the same school said, oh, we're going to organize something where everyone shows up in pink the next day. And we have that conversation. Anyone can wear any color. I find activities. My daughter is the one I sit there and watch hockey games with. My son's got no interest in it at all. Maybe he'll go play catch with me, but the idea of watching a game on TV for sports, no interest. Chantel, my daughter, is very interested in it. So activities. Both my kids did competitive dance together. And when my son was doing it, people might have looked a bit askance, saying, oh, why is a boy doing dance? Did it hip hop? Did it duet? It was beautiful. It was beautiful seeing them up on stage. Jobs is the one I talk to. Kids really end up getting into that conversation. And it's a great conversation because we don't want any kid to think, I can't go into this particular job. The one I still haven't seen a lot in schools, I don't know, throw it open to you. Anyone take a guess? The one in school we don't normally see. It's normally always, I found almost always females are in this position in the school. No, I started kindergarten, John. I started, my first job was a kid. It was a wild time, but I started in kindergarten. Yeah, there you go. I have never seen a school, and I was told in recent times, someone said, no, there is one. I'd be a great school secretary. I'd answer the phones. I wouldn't be good with Band-Aids, but PA, I mean, it'd be fantastic. So we just talked about that idea that, look, stereotypes, they came from somewhere for a reason, but it's up to us to help break those stereotypes. That's how we're going to end up moving things forward. That conversation kids generally have. I do want to play this one because we talk about derogatory slurs. We have, our board has the N-word protocol. We're very clear about the use of the N-word in schools. But we've also talked about the use of derogatory comments for any gender. So again, I'm sorry it might be soft, but hopefully you'll be able to hear it a bit. It's out. Fast forward it.
New York for this brilliant work.
So, are you going out tonight? I can't. My parents say I have to be home right after work. That's so gay. Totally gay.
Ugh, that is so Emma and Julia.
Why are you saying that's so Emma and Julia?
Well, you know when something is dumb or stupid, you say that's so Emma and Julia.
Who says that?
Everyone. Imagine if who you are were used as an insult. When you say that's so gay, do you realize what you say? Knock it off.
So it's an effective kind of lead-in to talk to students again about the words we use, what we say in a schoolyard. Schoolyard's where most things will tend to happen, and for them to kind of understand that, yeah, our words matter. And again, when I was in school, the word gay was used much more as an insult. Like why my kids are telling me now in university, almost never they hear it. They said they didn't hear a lot in high school, but find elementary school, it still is often. So again, just about raising that awareness for kids to kind of understand. Towards the end here, I'm not going to read this whole story to you, so I do want to leave time in case there are questions to discuss. But I read this story at the end to students, and it's a beautiful message. It's called "The Me I Choose to Be," and I'm going to just skip just to a couple of lines. So I'm going to just about a kid talking about who they are, the way they kind of choose things, their different sides about them. One line I really like, I want to share with you. It's towards the end, but yeah, there you go. I'm a gardener planting dreams the world will know. Such a beautiful idea. And then the last line in the story again, I'm all these things and more, you see, because I'm the me I choose to be. And the message I try and leave with students at that point towards the end of the presentation is this idea that, look, whoever you are, God loves you, God welcomes you, and so should everyone else within the room. And that's the message we want to kind of leave with the students. That's where the student presentation ends. I just want to share a few more things with you before I'm out of time. I do a follow-up survey just to see what's kind of landed with kids, what's landed with staff. So a lot of them, they talk about how they've learned the facts about it. They've learned what 2S LGBT+ stood for. They've learned about the history of the pride flag. They've learned about pronoun use. Another group of students talk about the message that sticks with them is that God loves everyone and that people are created equally. Great message. Some end up saying at the end, I always want to make sure you see this too, there's a significant number of responses who say they learned nothing. That's interesting. I do an anti-racism presentation. I never see that response at the end. I think it's almost kids still just kind of saying, I'm still resistant to this. That's fine. That's not going to be something, it's not about changing everyone how they maybe interpret something or how they receive it. It's simply about trying to move it forward a little bit. That's always the goal when this is happening. This staff one, this was one from a staff and it was interesting. So some of them, I mean, the positive students appreciated, felt included, that their questions were read aloud. I try not to shy away from the difficult questions with you as well. If I don't address your question tonight, it's not from not wanting to, it's I'm trying to be conscious of time, but I promise you, email me, I will call you. We can discuss any question you have at all. But this one at the end, I think is important to kind of see, where they say, some staff approach to the issue is still hypersensitive, fear aspect of saying the wrong thing or not being familiar with the latest politically correct language. There's a lot of fear around this topic. I think the fear comes from people being scared that they're going to say something wrong. I just don't know how you can go wrong with saying God loves everyone. It's a simple message, it's a powerful message, and it's an important message. This one, actually, I'll skip this one now. It's just from a book PD we use. This one I think is important for you to see. Institute for Catholic Education, they're the organization that's involved with the Family Life curriculum, with the Fully Alive resource as well. And so they clearly say, Understanding or defining sex and gender as separate and distinct terms is not consistent with the teachings of the Catholic Church. It does not reflect a Catholic understanding of the human person. It's a perspective that is recognized in law, the Ontario Human Rights Commission, and it should be acknowledged and respected. This is coming right from the Institute for Catholic Education. Just as we expect our beliefs as Catholics to be acknowledged and respected, even by those who don't necessarily share our beliefs. It's a powerful idea. That's who we are. We're accepting, we're inclusive. We listen to all respectfully. There are people who are going to disagree with the topic, and that's okay. We still have that conversation respectfully. And then last slide I want to leave you with, one of my favorite kind of ones from the Archdiocese of Hamilton. We don't need to agree or fully understand or to have all the answers. We just need to hear people. That's one of my firmest belief systems. In this job that I'm in, that I started just this past January, I find there are many difficult conversations I have each and every day. But all I try to do is listen to people and hear them. And that's what the kids in our school want. That's what the parents want. That's what all of you may want. Just to be heard and to be listened to. And everyone deserves that. Everyone deserves the gift we bring people is the gift of allowing them to speak their story, to be seen and to be heard. I think I've addressed the questions that were there in the doc. I know I'm out of time. There's one that was about how are we supporting students that identify through this sort of conversation. Everything is on a case-by-case basis, whether social work, guidance, school principal, we engage kids in those conversations. I think someone was asking about staff trainings. Yeah, we're doing staff training all the time because staff do feel fear around this. Someone asked about can students or parents identify the gender when they register. That is on SOAR if people so choose. It's male, female, and other, and then they're able to fill in if they so choose, the parents. And someone had asked about, does this start as low as SK? At SK, the conversation would simply be about welcoming everyone and understanding that everyone deserves to be loved by God. As we get up into the higher grades, by grade 5 and 6, I believe, specifically talks about homophobia and how we can make sure the idea of that video, that's so gay, that would be something kids could be talked to understand slurs or anything that hurt anyone. There's a slur to describe my skin color. There's a slur to describe everyone in this room, as well as our identity. And it's not okay if you say anything with hatred. And then by the time it gets to grade 7, 8, that's when something like gender identity can be discussed. Not to, again, as some people fear, to try and convert someone, to simply say, look, lived experiences. Different people have different lived experiences. And all we do is we acknowledge and we welcome. That's the whole point. So I know I'm out of time. I know there's probably the next presentation to move. I'm very open. If you feel any questions, Joe, otherwise, please feel free to email me, as I keep saying, and I guarantee you I will respond. And March 19th, if you would like to see that play, it's a really powerful one. And I'd really appreciate it if you happen to have time. It's from 5 till 6 p.m. on March 19th, right here. Just let me know because we're trying to keep a track on it.
Thank you, Roy, for that presentation. And yeah, I'll open it up to the floor if there's any questions.
Thank you for that presentation. Will it be available for us to have access to?
What I'm hoping is, I think, because we have the live stream here, so that's kind of going to be the best part. I find that presentations on their own, just to give, people don't necessarily see the context of it. So I'm so glad this is live stream. Any of you are welcome at any time to go back and have a look at it. It's there.
Mostly for the links, because there's several links that you
Yes.
kind of went through.
Okay.
So it would be, I think for myself, I'd be
For sure.
interested in having access
I'll
to
send the
that.
links, absolutely.
So that's thing number one. That would be there for me. And then I was curious would you be able to show slide number 41? Because you kind of went by it and I was curious what the feedback was from grade 1.
Oh, it wasn't grade 1 feedback, sorry. That was just, it was a book called Reading the Rainbow. Yeah, I definitely will go back to it. It's a really kind of nice story. So this is from a book called Reading the Rainbow, and it's just about how to include these sorts of conversations in dialogue. And so the blurb reads, the grade 1 class never did come to a complete agreement about the rightness or wrongness of having 2 moms. There must have been a student that said, hey, I have 2 moms or I have 2 dads, and someone was making fun of them for that. And it's saying it's never about agreement, about the rightness or wrongness. That was never the point. Teaching about LGBTQ people isn't about making students think a certain way. Instead, expanding representations like Mariana did in this lesson helped her students gain a greater understanding of LGBTQ-headed families as one possible family configuration. This is not in the student presentation. This is when we do staff kind of facing, just to help staff understand. Because again, one of my first classes I taught back in 1998, there was a student, I don't know what year it was, but there was a student that had two mothers. And if you imagine back then, how much that kid got made fun of and how much I made sure that, no, everyone's welcome in this class. Everyone's lived experience is okay. But it's the idea that sometimes just about getting those messages. See, I know no grade 1 surveys, because I haven't had a presentation to grade 1.
Got it. Thank you. And I just have one quick follow-up and then I'm done. I'm curious and I don't know if we have a measure for this, but do we have an approximate percentage of, grade 7s and 8s, approximately what percentage identify as?
It's a phenomenal question. And I wish I could give you a straight answer. And the best answer I'm going to tell you is because everything is voluntary self-identification, no idea. Like our census results, I'm not sure if that's been discussed here before, that the student census results at elementary level, they were very sparse. There was, I don't want to misquote, but I feel like it was as low as maybe 20% that maybe responded to the elementary survey. So
Is that the response or is that who responded as?
No, the response rate. And so what our research department tells us that is it's not enough for it to be significant, but it's a great question. I wish we had better data collection.
Okay, thank
Why
you.
do you think there was not enough?
Response to the student survey? I don't know. I mean, I was a school principal at the time when that happened. I feel like that was it during COVID time somewhat? Some people say maybe we should have, whether it was the communication to the parents, we needed more of it, whether it's in general. People use this term survey fatigue, which I do and I don't get because I answer every survey ever sent to me. I feel it's my responsibility to do it, but a lot of people just don't. I find even the school presentations beforehand, I get about, I'm going to say 80 to 85% of the people answering the pre-survey. Afterwards, I get a pittance reply.
20%, how many identified?
I don't know. I can find out. I'm sorry, I don't have that answer.
That's a good information that we should have, so we
Yes.
know where our how do I say that? Our focus should be.
Yes.
Because as a mom of 3 different kids, and one on grade 6 that got made fun of it, called many derogative names. One thing that I think kids have a lot of misinformation and curiosity. And it's nice that we know the percentage if we can. We can do that through the principals, like we can try to talk to them and see where that lies. And if it's necessary to flood them with more information. I think if we stick to the basic, kids will understand. So we don't need to overflood them with a lot of letters. And we had that conversation last meeting that all the acronyms confuses everybody. So, and more confusion and more acronyms will divide more. I feel like the flag is nice because the flag will unify everybody. But as long as you keep dividing the acronyms and try to explain all of them to the kids, they won't get it. They don't understand, put your shoes on in the morning. So
In university, they don't understand. Put your shoes on.
you try to tell them put your shoes on, they don't get it. So I think it's nice that we keep simple. This is my point of view, but I would love to know the percentage.
Fine. And again, my first thing is I'm sorry for the experience that
You
you're
can share with
talking
the entire group would be better.
about. Definitely, I will for sure.
Just had a question.
Yeah.
Slide 41, so Mariana was a teacher who had a presentation for her grade 1 students.
I think it must have been Hispanic representation like Mariana did. Yeah, so Mariana was the teacher and it must have come up in the class. Someone was being made fun of at that time. And so Mariana just addressed that this kid said, well, no, I have 2 moms. What's wrong with that?
Mariana helped the kids understand.
Yeah.
So this is not like a regular thing at TCPSB, it's just this one off. So it could happen in some schools.
We talk about the idea of it again. It's almost what the point is made. It's not about the rightness or wrongness of it. It's the understanding that, okay, so if this child has that, good. Do we love them any less? No, because
Yeah, but
God
I mean,
loves
like,
all.
are the teachers presenting this stuff in grade 1 or just?
It wouldn't be as a formal lesson, no, definitely
Okay,
not.
but the
Yeah.
teachers do have the option. to present.
It could come up. I believe in grade 2 social studies curriculum, right? In the curriculum, it speaks about recognizing different lived experiences of families. And one of those examples they give is same-sex marriage. So Pope Francis clearly says, and we all know that within the Catholic Church, there is no same-sex marriage because it's the idea of marriage as a procreation. But he says civil unions, and that's something that they kind of have there. So To answer your question, no, it's not something that's a defined lesson that's there. But is it something that could come up? Sure it could. And then again, it's the idea of showing everyone that everyone's lived experience is their lived experience, and that's okay.
So is this presentation being taught right now in the schools or not yet?
The one that the presentation I just gave today to grade 7-8. Grade 7-8, I go in when schools request. It's something that I can go in and I'll kind of give it. It's an assembly I'll do for grade 7-8 students.
It's an assembly for the whole schools?
Grade 7-8.
Yeah, and has it happened yet in schools?
Grade 7-8, absolutely. Yeah, no, it had. I don't know if you were at the start of the presentation. So the
Yeah, I
start.
watched it while I was driving.
Oh, okay, great. So they'll say that letter goes home to parents if the presentation happens according to PPM 162. So I'd say maybe at this point,
How many?
5 to 7 schools.
In all of Toronto?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so at our school, there was
Requests, yeah.
another group, I think, Harmony Movement. You heard of them?
I have, yeah.
They came to our grade 7 school and taught, like they did a in-class presentation
Okay,
and didn't go very well at all.
okay.
Yeah, so I don't know if this is like,
Sorry,
this
which
is a
group is this?
requested presentation that the school requests.
Correct, yeah. For mine, it's if I go in on invitation, I do a 2S LGBTQ+ one and an anti-racism one. So when school is requested, I go in.
One that you would do or?
Anti-racism one kind of encompasses a lot of that. Yeah, because a lot of it is covered by that. Because the idea of kids will constantly get into about jokes. And it's like, well, jokes are not okay if the person that's receiving it doesn't feel like it's okay.
Like, who did the presentation, you said?
Harmony Movement. That's what, and they said they were a board recommended group.
John, and then I have Ryan.
I guess all the videos and links and stuff in there, they've been cleared by ICE, the Archdiocese, like.
By us, yeah, by the department. I mean, it's all done
No, not you.
to ICE. I mean, I haven't said.
I don't know. Like, they put out things part of Fully Live.
Yeah.
The Archdiocese, like, okay, some of this stuff, like, are these vetted or are these things that you picked in terms of links and videos?
For sure, yeah. I'd say it's definitely things that, I mean, that our department has kind of gone through. We've shared it at Ed Council, so all the superintendents have seen it, so vetted through that way.
But it hasn't been vetted by the church.
Church, no.
Should it be?
If you're asking me, no, I would think that in our role, we're making sure, I mean, the messages, everything's about, it's following Christ's message. It's the idea of, I mean, of love and acceptance.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt that absolutely want to make sure that all kids get educated and those kind of things. There's also, I know you kind of stuck at the end in terms of the church's response to things, right? But there isn't really context to why the church has said certain things, right? And you know, even with like other things, like Jesus told the Marians, like, you know, I forgive you, but sin no more. Even the tax collectors did that. So there was a qualification to stuff too, right? So we just got to be careful about making sure that we're framed in the right context of a Catholic school and Catholic teachings, while still making sure that students like get fully educated, don't experience anything going on in the school. But I think that's sometimes where the messages kind of get mixed up and why there's so much noise regarding some of these subjects, because the context isn't properly provided against those things, right? Right, because even like Pope Francis mentioned, he said, like, you know, who am I to judge? But at the same time, as the Vatican put out a document and said, you know, certain things, right? So we just got to be careful when we pick and choose certain things to make sure everyone gets the full context, because just those 2 slides at the end, you know, you guys said, yes, the church doesn't agree with this stuff, but it maybe had to say why, right? Because, you know, they believe.
That one's, again, just to clarify too, John, that one's for staff. That's not a student slide. That's kind of going.
Okay, so then you actually don't even show the students the church's perspective?
The one, the ICE one?
Not the ICE one. I think there was the one, yeah, there was the ICE one, and there was the Hamilton one, I think it was. You showed.
Hamilton one, yes, that one we definitely do, the Hamilton ICE, because just that message of making sure people can be heard and understood, yeah. But no, a lot of, that's what I said, there's some of those that are very staff specific, the student ones are, yeah, weren't their level.
Are you doing this because of the PPM?
Rochelle.
That's not,
Because I was just trying, because I along the
we
same.
have to be careful, like when we're at this, so Brian?
Yeah, I don't know why this is an option. I'm not sure why this is being mandatory taught in all schools.
The content, what we did is, so our department, we sent out a curriculum document to all schools to use, I mean, in terms of support for things they can do. Presentations, like anything, I mean, I make sure that people are aware that I am ready to come in at any point in time to do it. Sometimes, again, myself as a school principal, I'd be doing this myself. I wouldn't necessarily need someone else to come in to deliver the presentations. I think some schools, they might be doing it.
But that's you, right?
Yes.
That's not all schools.
No, I would agree with you.
So who's gonna be the voice for the students at those schools where the teachers or the principals are taking it upon themselves to reach out to you,
Yeah.
to make sure that this is being taught?
It's a fair question. I mean, what we try and do is we try and make sure the system's getting as much support as possible by, through what we send out. If any of you, I'm hoping you see our newsletter that goes out every month, and every month in it, we have those 3 strands. We have Indigenous education, anti-Black racism, and 2S LGBTQ+. So we are constantly providing support to the system and what that's there. I'd be glad to go to school every day. I know that at some point, yeah, probably don't have enough time to end up doing that. So I make it very much of it's invitational. It's always invitational.
Can we not send the presentation directly to staff and have staff teach it?
No.
I think on that, you gotta have people who are comfortable delivering material, and maybe not everyone's going to do it. I hear your point. Listen, I appreciate and I understand it. And at every principals meeting I'm at, we have, in the end, it's the principal that will request for us to come in. So principals know, and to your point, I'll share that again. Next principals meeting I'm presenting at, I'll say, and it's fascinating too. Look at the difference of conversation just within the room itself. There's some who maybe are feeling a bit more concerned about messaging, then there's some who are gonna say every school should have it. So that's why in the end, it ends up being, it's an invitational piece. We constantly make sure schools are hearing the message from us, and then they kind of make those choices going forward. I'm gonna leave it to you to how many more questions you want. So I'm glad to take them. I can also reply to email to people afterwards.
Roy's point. So hi, Ryan Putnam, CFO. Even weekly education, I'm just thinking of the tiered and the cascading messaging and then the awareness to the question, which is we get it weekly at Education Council, updates, links every week that are coming through from the equity department. Then it's layered out to, and that's our area SOs as well, which I think is an important conduit, and Superintendent Peterson can speak to that. Then there's a layering at our K-12 meetings with the online messaging, and then there's the local area meetings when 2 area SOs are pairing up and we're getting around to that. This is a consistent messaging around then equipping the principal, which is the key piece, through the area SO to make sure that the message is there. So I would encourage that also, like Roy cannot be everywhere, and I think that's not what you're saying, but it's around making sure that the content is delivered and that there's the opportunity for every school and every student to hear it. I think that we're doing a good job. This is a movement, not an event, but Roy has got an audience at every possible forum. Thanks.
So we'll go to TCI, Gab, and then Rochelle, and then we'll call it a presentation.
Reach out to me, anyone.
I would like to know, I don't know if it's to you, the question, or to Ms. Kimberly or any other trustees and to the board maybe. But did we have any approved curriculum for the board, for the TCDSB to teach this subject?
There's the phys ed curriculum. So the ministry curriculum is the curriculum that we follow. And
Yeah, but I remember years ago when we were talking about the flag raising, and that was discretionary for each school first, and then it became mandatory, but it was never discussed curriculum on that specific topic about the LGBTQ plus community. I would like to know the curriculum. Where's the curriculum?
Ministry. If you want to any ministry, I could send again. It's the ministry. There's the health and phys ed curriculum is where a lot of this will fall into. And then as Catholic schools, there's the family life curriculum as well. So yeah, both of those you could access. The family life curriculum you could access through Institute for Catholic Education.
Mhm.
And then the health and phys ed curriculum, yeah, just the ministry website. You can go on and find stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Gabrielle?
So on one front, I see there being a value to perhaps expanding the conversation, not because your message is one of love and acceptance. And so perhaps there's a value in broadening also the presentation to it be acceptance, because it could be even a young child that is going through chemotherapy and loses his or her hair, and it's still the same message. It's a message of acceptance and love. So that's something to look at. But the other question I have for you is with regards to bringing something through parents for parents at the school level does your department or would your department be interested in creating some kind of partnership so that we could have conversations with parents that might be interested in engaging in this? Because one thing is what happens in the classroom with the students, but everything those students say in the schoolyard is coming from, I would say, a strong part of what's happening in the schoolyard is at home. So the students is only one part of the equation. And is there something that you'd be interested in us looking at creating a presentation or something that we could work together with the schools and bring that to the parent conversation?
That was the whole point of coming today, really in the hopes that speaking to this group, we know you're the conduit towards the parents. And I think it'd be phenomenal because as you say, it's the messaging that we want. We want to keep making sure that staff are hearing it, that students are hearing, but that parents, and again, not everyone's going to want to hear that message. That's acceptable as well too, but we're very open. I talk to anyone, anytime. I've had some very difficult conversations on the phone. I've had some good ones. So yeah, at any point, I'd be very interested to talk further to that.
Okay, so then my recommendation, aside from a follow-up, is that there be also some kind of a recap that we can take to the schools that we visit to then present to the CSPCs. Because in listening to your presentation, there was a lot, and I'm like trying to take notes as I'm sure other people were too. And so there would be value in maybe a recap that we can bring to the schools and then a follow-up with perhaps a presentation or two that we could make available to the schools.
Absolutely. I'll work on that. I'll get something to CPIC.
Okay, Rochelle, last question.
Yeah, so just to elaborate Gabriella's point about, and she actually I was thinking along the same lines as her. Like there's not many wards that are represented by CPIC parents like ourselves who are sitting in this room. So have you thought of bringing up this presentation to all the CSPCs or bringing it down through the principal and saying, hey, principal, can you bring this up to the CSPC meeting? Have you thought of that?
Okay. Not to that, to the CSPCs, we haven't got to that point yet. Principals have received this presentation as that first step, which is let's get this into your schools. Let's make sure your students getting this message. As we talked, that tiered approach, absolutely. It's working in collaboration, parents, staff, students. So yeah, I'll take that away for sure.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
And then the other thing is, John also brought up a point, like, is this kind of looked at by ICE? You mentioned somewhere in your slides that there's something to do with the PPM. Could you elaborate
Yeah,
that?
so PPM, the Ministry of Education, if you were to go on, you could type it in yourself, PPM 162, and the Ministry of Education makes it clear that any conversations around certain topics, around this topic, about sexuality, the parents have to be aware before that conversation happens. So if this presentation happens in a grade 7-8 at the school, principal makes sure the letter goes home telling parents, hey, this presentation is coming in. Some parents might choose to say, I don't want my kid to take part in this, and that's their right as a parent.
So then they just take that child out of the class?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is like a requirement by the
Absolutely.
ministry to have this presentation.
Yes.
in grade 7 and 8.
Yeah.
And that's why you haven't done it earlier than that, because it's the
Correct.
PM saying grade 7.
Correct, yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
A quick one?
Yeah, just because you brought up the ministry and how this is already part of the curriculum expectations for health. So why isn't this already being taught? Because this has been updated since I think 2019.
It should be, I mean, in the sense that it's in the curriculum. So this presentation is not the curriculum. This presentation is one way to kind of support it. And it ends up being in that assembly type format where some principals feel more comfortable with someone else maybe coming in. But in terms of the actual curriculum, yeah, I mean, every school would be following the curriculum process as they go through.
Well, because if they're following that part of the expectations in the
Yeah.
curriculum using Fully Alive, it doesn't cover these expectations.
There's both the Fully Alive, which is the resource for family life, and there's also the health and phys ed curriculum, which has other expectations there. So it's all part of the program that's delivered.
But don't teachers use the Fully Alive program to cover that part of the curriculum?
One resource they will, but again, there's also as you'll see on your child's report card, there is the religion comment, but then there's and the family life comment, but there's also a phys ed comment. So it can be covered in either which way because it's there in it. So it depends again on the teacher. Some teachers, if the school has, most grade 7-8 teachers are teaching their own phys ed unless they have Rotary, so they would be covering it in that space. Thanks for the question. Thank you.
Okay.
Awesome questions. Thank you very much for all of those. If I didn't address anything, please do let me know. And I have, similar to some of you, 3 meetings this week, so I'm going to bid you now, and we'll see you another time. But thanks very much for the
Roy,
opportunity.
for joining us, and we'll wait on that email with those links, and I'll share with the team. Can I get someone to receive? A seconder, Brian? Anyone opposed? Okay, seeing none, we received. Perfect. Now we're moving on to our second presentation of the evening, right? Superintendent Kimberly Dixon, who's the superintendent of mathematics, curriculum, and innovation. The floor is yours.
Wonderful. So good evening. Thanks for having me tonight. The purpose of me coming tonight was to develop a common understanding of the ministry priority actions that are outlined in the TCDSB Math Achievement Action Plan. And I know that was attached to your agenda. So thank you, Chair, for sharing that with the parents in advance. And I want to just have a conversation about how they're being implemented and supported in the schools. So this is part of our team. So we have a variety of roles within the math department. We have elementary resource teachers. So they're teachers who have come out of the classroom to be a part of the math department, and they work in areas across the board. We also have an elementary board math lead, and Rosanna is responsible for the facilitators, which I'll speak to in the next slide. And then we have 2 secondary math resource teachers and a secondary board math lead who's responsible for secondary math facilitators. We have this lovely group of elementary math facilitators who are newly hired. 3 of them were existing, and we got to expand with 5 new roles. And they work in schools. The ministry identified 51 elementary schools, which they work in. And we also have 3 secondary math facilitators not featured here who work in 8 secondary schools across the system. So why do we have a math achievement action plan, and why do you have a superintendent of math all of a sudden? So previous to this role, I was the Area 6 superintendent for 3 years, and this is a newly created superintendent position by the ministry. And so I stepped into the role in June, and the directive from the ministry was to develop, all boards must develop a math achievement action plan. So we identified 3 areas of priority. So ensuring that staff are teaching the new curriculum. The elementary one was released in 2020 and the secondary in 2021. Supporting teachers' content knowledge for teaching. So that's the professional learning that we offer as a board that staff can register for workshops, et cetera, to support what they're teaching in the classroom. And the third priority is really connecting to our equity action plan. So it was nice that Roy was here as well. I'm a firm believer that the work happens at the intersection of equity and well-being. And so that third pillar really speaks to how we support learners and make it accessible for all. I think it's the only subject where you walk up to people and you say, I'm the superintendent of math, and they go, oh, I'm terrible at math. Nobody would say, oh, I'm terrible at reading, but they're comfortable saying they're terrible at math. So what we're trying to say is we need to remove those barriers, that developing math content knowledge is an essential skill for all. And there should be, and there is, a math course for all learners from K to 12. Some of you are going, I don't know, but there really is. And so it's building students' confidence, and that's what the third pillar speaks to. Part of what I want to share with you is knowing how you can find this information after today's meeting. So on the board website, when you go into the main page, if you click on teaching and learning, the Math Achievement Action Plan is right here. And so what we tried to do with this plan was put it in language that you could say as a parent, oh, that's what that means in my child's school. So for priority 1, why is this needed? Who is this for? And how will your child benefit? We're also working at the intersection of the special service department, ensuring that we have a universal design for learning in all classrooms and differentiated instruction. So that's something I've been saying for a few years prior to the plan is when kids don't understand something and they need that just-in-time learning, they need it right then and there. They don't necessarily need to be withdrawn. They need that little mini lesson, and then they perhaps will be able to move on with the on-grade learning. So we're working in partnership with the Special Service Department to say, how can we look at things differently to make sure that we have created classroom environments for mathematics where there's an entry point for all learners, and they might have the problems that they're looking at might have a low floor, so everyone can enter. And then there's this high ceiling option where teachers can differentiate and give an advancement or continue on here while they're working with other students. So what the team does, the facilitators go into schools and they work with teachers in grade 3 and or 6 as identified by the ministry. And they co-teach and they co-plan with them, and they have time. I always say it's a privilege. We have time to be focused on one subject area. So to partner with those educators in the school and be able to offer their expertise, share with them how to use the resources is, something that many have been welcome to engage in. And so let me go back. There we go. Beautiful. All right. I think one of the big questions I've been getting as I go into schools, and that's obviously where I can get real information about what's happening and what's needed. And what I'm hearing back from parents is, where is the textbook and how can you help us to support our kids at home? So I wanted to share with you what the core resources are that have been vetted and supported by the central academic team. And so what you will be seeing in your child's classroom. So the Math Up Classroom is a digital resource. So the ministry gave funds for digital math resources and staffing. So there is no physical textbook like there was 4 or 5 years ago. The Math Up Classroom works when the educator projects that information, that lesson up on the screen in the classroom. So the whole class does not have to have a device. It's helpful when there are devices to be shared amongst the students so that they can do some of the work online. And what we're finding is that educators that have perhaps a Google Classroom and they take a snippet of screen capture of the worked problem and they put it in the Google Classroom, it provides an example when the kids go home to do the work and we're like, I don't know how you solved it in class. There's the example. We're also exploring, given the feedback we're hearing from classrooms, what other options there might be. So there is a Math Up workbook that goes alongside the digital program, and that's something that we're considering. Sure, absolutely.
Okay, it's on this textbook issue.
Yes.
It's actually a very big issue because we've heard this from various councils that tell us that the school has no money because they're spending all the money on photocopying and printing. The kids are coming back with X, Y, and Z. So let me ask like a really pointed core question is why, if the TCSB is one of the largest school boards, or if we partner with the TDSB across the street, why are we not creating a textbook or a workbook that can be used and provided consistently so it's not A, B, and C? There's no problem with teachers pulling extra resources for things, but there should be a core aspect, because this is what we keep hearing. There's no textbooks. I got papers all over the place. Teachers are photocopying. Like, that's unacceptable. So
Expensive.
yeah, so why can't we translate this into something that can actually be put into a book and publish it ourselves? Like Trustee LaPredi, you may want to jump on this as a trustee. Like, well, that's a really core question. Like, so what is the answer to that?
Thank you for the question. So I think the first piece to recognize is that when the curriculum was rewritten, then the textbooks did not align exactly. So
Right.
Some of those textbooks could still be used. There's content in there that could still be taught, but there is no longer a textbook that you open and flip from page to page. Your question about why don't we as a board publish the text? I'm not sure that we are in the business of that, but I'll take it back. But typically we work with publishing companies that do that. So what they have done is create these resources. Edwin is formerly Nelson. They went digital. Math Up is a digital resource. My Mathology, they all went digital. So they do have companion documents. And that's what I'm hearing that parents would like is they'd like that physical workbook, whether kids write in it or not, they want the physical workbook to come home and they can work from it.
The digital one is, I get it, it's easy to update content and whatnot, but the reality is math is done, usually on a paper to see. Parents want to be able to work through those things. So that is a huge gap. And not having that consistent text, like when it was a Nelson Math, that was the curriculum. You could go through, parents could see what I was supposed to learn. If the kids missed a lesson, you knew where they were. Right now, it's up in the air. And then we talk about what the root of the problem math is. We don't have the fundamentals down. So how the heck are we going to start to teach against it, right?
You said something really, really poignant. And if I could just repeat and correct me if I was wrong, but you said they had the math textbook and that was the curriculum.
It followed the curriculum pretty close.
Right? So the curriculum exists in the ministry documents. And we want educators to be referring back to those specific expectations and the following expectations and using the resources to support the curriculum. And what started to happen is we all got comfortable in that and we weren't meeting the needs of the learners in front of us. Because not every kid, there's not a textbook that you can open in September that's going to meet the needs of the 20 to 30 kids in front of you.
Granted.
But when we have a variety of resources that educators who have the content knowledge for teaching can pull that information from, it helps them to be more responsive in the classroom. That's not to say that I definitely have heard that there needs to be something that goes from school to home that helps us as parents, I'm a parent too, support our kids in the classroom.
I got a quick question here. If it's
Okay, so I do agree with what some of John said. My biggest issue with the online, and this goes to the resources and the tools that the schools have themselves. And I'll just use our school as an example, because I'm sure it's happening in other schools as well. We just had two new classrooms put into our school. And apparently the board does not pay for whiteboards and projectors. And it is falling on CSPCs and principals with their block budgets to supply these. And the answer we get is, well, it's not necessary to teach. But yet everything I see here is digital and it has to go up on a screen to teach the child. So we don't have textbooks. Some classrooms don't have whiteboards and projectors. Oh yeah, we have 8 in our school that don't have whiteboards and projectors. And we are a fast growing school. So, and yeah, I'm a parent that I'm always, where's the stuff to teach you how to do this when my kids come home? So my biggest crutch with all this is I don't have a big deal with digital. I get it. But if the tools aren't there in the school to put that up for the children, to teach them, that's another big issue that the schools are facing, is the equipment to teach this.
And if I may just.
So from digital to textbook, it's still textbook or digital, and they come home, they're writing on paper, not writing on the textbook or the digital copy. So you're saying that in the schools, what are the teachers teaching on? They don't have the textbook or paper.
Well, not even the textbook. The point is some don't even have the equipment, like the projectors and the whiteboards to put that up.
So what are they teaching?
Okay. I don't want to get away from math into equipment.
No, it's not that,
I
but
know,
it goes hand in hand because they have to teach that math. And
But I just want to keep the questions.
Through the chair, maybe we can finish the presentation.
Yeah, we can take more questions. Yeah.
I included this one because I knew you'd have lots of questions. So we can talk more. This.
Dixon, keep going and then we can hold our questions, or else we're not going to get through the presentation.
So I also wanted to share some of the resources, the supplemental resources that I have seen students really engaged with. Both I've seen them in the classroom when I visit schools, and I've seen them online through Twitter when principals and teachers are sharing. So you may be familiar with Knowledge Hook. It's probably I went into a grade 4 or 5 classroom, and as I was leaving, 2 kids pulled me over and said, "Miss, look, I have 32 more stars. I'm going to finish this mathlon." Another one said, "Miss, I earned the gold badge." And I thought, like, they don't even know me, but they're excited. And that's what we want, is the kids to be excited about math and to be meeting with success. So these are just some of the resources. Zorbits is K-2. There's like a Martian that goes on an adventure. So it's just making math have an entry point for all learners and making them interested in wanting to engage with it. Over to the questions. Oh, back.
So for like knowledge hub. Sir, parents need, so do schools need a code? Like let's say John wants his child to go on Knowledge Hook.
The students already have their login.
So all students in all of our schools from K to 12 have an access code.
So it's Knowledge Hook is K-10, but they.
Got my children, I don't have any.
And parents have no idea, zero idea.
That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here.
I don't have a code, just saying.
Okay, so I gotta create a speaker list right now, because I know we'll start with Rochelle.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that Mathology and Zorbits, they don't work unless you have an iPad. So what happens to those parents who don't have iPads? Are you aware that they don't work if you don't?
Actually, no, Zorbits will work on a laptop.
Yeah, they all.
What happens to those parents who don't have a laptop at home or don't have an iPad? And how many iPads are in a classroom of, let's say, 29 children?
So look at there's CFO Putnam. Enjoy that segue, sir. No, we won't get into.
Actually, I think one of the things we're doing is building out our ratios of access to equipment. And you're right, it's not about the equipment discussion tonight, but the equipment is still just a tool, right? But making sure that we have a reasonable sort of distribution, access, what's available in the schools. Our new CIO has just joined us recently. He has a lot of experience at this in terms of really assessing current state of where we're at in terms of our schools, the access, aligning it with our different provincial priorities, changing pedagogy. You're not wrong, John. We're seeing printing costs up. We did an inquiry, and that's partly why. But I think the other important element too is making sure that kids aren't actually getting pushed backwards into the traditional printing out worksheets and having them work in isolation. It's more got to do with engaging in the classroom and, lessons, whether there's a projector or not, whether there is, devices in the room or not, it's still teacher-led instruction. They're accessing these tools and just using those resources. We're looking at the ability for how our libraries or learning commons can be used differently as well when you're considering equitable access to technology. It is a movement, not an event, where I do think we have some work to do around equipping the system or around making sure that our teachers have the teaching tools. We are hearing that from our union partners as well, that their members are looking to advance in this area and they're hungry and they're eager. In the past, it might have been difficult to get adoption of new practices, and now actually that's sort of tipped over now. And I think actually the momentum is there. We now need to find a way to support it. But I would encourage and say yes, no matter what's available in each individual classroom on any given day for the lesson. I think mixing up the strategies, getting away from the board actually, and getting into the pods and all the strategies that you're trying to teach. I did spend a year, one of my year's learning plans was actually going on monitoring visits when the last round of math and the new change was, and really was, we tried different pilots with different things, dedicating iPads to particular classes to the technology and seeing and looking at best practices. It really defaulted actually to creating pods, some stand-up stations, and effective delivery. And yet you still found the traditional worksheet practice in a lot of classrooms as well. So it's a little more complicated. I think it's how you're trying to roll it out through your facilitators and change the thinking and equipping your teachers. So, Mr. Chair, sorry, that's a bit of finance, but also respectfully back on task.
Gabriella and then Leticia.
So one of the, just in a few moments ago, you were speaking about the Math Up program. And again, our lens is through the lens of what the parent would need. And one of the things that came up when we had the presentation for Math Up at our school and the request for tools for parents came up, what was given back to us was that the parent resource is available via link only for 2 weeks only. And it is left to the teacher to upload and make available each time that a new resource is being taught. So I'm bringing this to you in the spirit of making it easier to access. And if it's like that, then you've got how many teachers across how many schools having to communicate, and there's a huge opportunity for breakdown there. So I see an opportunity for creating something that's a little bit more accessible and something a little more permanent. To John's point, I get the value of having an electronic tool. So perhaps there could be something, I'm not proposing like a Google Drive, but something like that where the information is accessible on a drive that can easily be updated when necessary, but that is available for a longer period of time. And that also speaks to a child's need. Who's to say that a child is learning at the same speed at which it's being taught? And that a parent is available to sit and teach that child and support that child at the time that it is being taught. So access to the information and the resources over an extended period of time will support parent engagement and student achievement. So I think that would be something important to look at.
Well said. When I referenced the snippet and the screenshot, that was our workaround to that 2-week link availability so that it doesn't expire because you've just screenshotted that information. So the teacher goes into the link versus posting the link, they screenshot the information that appears and put that into the Google Classroom. Point well taken.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, Leticia?
She basically translated everything that I wanted to say, but I just want to point it out. I'm a very big advocate for the newcomers to the country, and we are a country that it's made out of like newcomers, especially at this time in life. Anyways, like there are a lot of parents that they don't speak the language. And math, I know math is universal, but it's taught differently in many different countries. Like I get 100% of my friends that are newcomers, not only from Brazil, from everywhere in the world, they say the same thing. I don't know how to support my child because I don't have the material. I would love to have the material up-handed that I can read it and I can help them. So we are here as a group to improve parent engagement throughout the board. We need to help the parents to access those materials to help the kids. So I think that's the only way we're gonna get kids to achieve more in school. Once we help the parents to help the kids. So we need to make easy for that group to access the links, the documents, curriculum, and everything to help the child up-handed to get better in school. So.
Yeah. Like math's been a problem for 20 years since I've been a trustee, right? And we haven't solved the problem. And when I think about why that is the case, right? Because it is true that math is math. Like one has one, and whatever language it is what it is. We've, and the ministry also did when they tried to get it, change the curriculum and stuff. But it comes down to 3 core things that I did, right? And I had to self-teach my kids during the COVID time, and best stuff they learned was they saw examples on the YouTube videos of those things. But it comes down to 2 things. One was core math, right? Like rote math, right? 1 times 1 is 1. 1 is like people laugh, but that is the fundamentals that you need to understand first, right? Because then we got away from that, but that my kids learned with the little times table thing they had, like that translated. Number 2, when we talk about the digitization of stuff, we're pushing a lot of the 21st century that like, yes, you got to be with the kids, but when they do their standardized testing and stuff, they got to fill out the papers, the books, and those kind of things, and understand that stuff to write it down. It's about teaching the problem solving, because so then the question or the issue around language is, if you don't understand how to interpret a problem statement, because that's where then all math comes together and says, Jimmy does 5 cents, this and that, like you have to understand how to break that down. And we haven't done a good job of just understanding how to break down the problem solving. And the third layer is the applicability of it, right? Because if you can actually show the kids how it actually translates to real life, right? Money, banking, those things. So with those things, then you create the applicability, you create the understanding of not getting frustrated when they see big problems. And number three, then they have the fundamentals locked down, right? It's because everything roots back to it's an addition, a subtraction, it's a bed mass, like those kind of things, right? So when I think of everything we're doing here, it's not your fault or anything, but we spend a lot of time doing a lot of doodads and things of that nature. When those are the three core root things you have to get to, then everything else on top of that is gravy. And I understand completely there are kids who then need extra special attention. That's where we should be doing the work as a math team to do differentiated teaching for them. But the other 80%, it comes down to those three things. That's just my view from 20 years being in the system, right? And
If I may, through the chair. So two things. One is to go back to Leticia, thank you for your comments. I want to also just highlight in this parent document, we did provide some links so that parents don't have to hunt around for information. So on the last page, there's links to the elementary math curriculum. So what is it that my child is going to learn in 4th grade? In the summer, your kid finishes 3rd grade, you go in, you look, you see, okay, this is what they're going to learn. We didn't talk about the high impact instructional practices. And so this idea, someone asked, well, what are they doing if they don't have the projector and the screen? That's not all of the lessons. So, CFO Putnam referred to when we make groupings, we're very big right now onto vertical spaces. So we have students get together, the teacher still can write on the whiteboard or the chalkboard. Here's the problem. Now group together in small groups, chart paper if they don't have a erasable whiteboard, and solve the problem. And now let's go around band show. Band show meaning all the kids go around and they go with a sticky note and they put it on there and they say, I don't understand what you did here, or this is wrong. You didn't use bed mass properly. And they kind of evaluate each other's work. And then the teacher puts it up on the board and talks about it. So it's not all project the textbook or the math up from math up and everyone has to be writing in their notebook. So part of the new curriculum is understanding the addendum document, which talks about flexible grouping and all of those high impact instructional practices. And those are the types of things that the facilitators and the math resource teachers, and I didn't talk about the other group, which are the numeracy literacy coaches. There are 10 of them that exist in schools in our system. They work with grade 6 classes. We really worked very hard in our first month together to make sure we had a consistent approach, same messaging, so that when they're going into classrooms and they're working with staff are getting that support and we're building capacity so that they don't need them forever. Staff that have strategies. And to your point, Mr. Dilgren, I couldn't agree with you more. And as a math teacher from the beginning, 24 years ago, I think when we talked about we need to focus on problem solving, it was misunderstood that we're focusing on problem solving and not still doing those core essential skills. So I think you're right. It has to be a 3-pronged approach. And some students will spend more time in the rote until they can get to the problem solving. We're seeing through our standardized tests, which are digital, right? So they are doing them on the computer and there's no opportunity for a communication assessment, but we can assess, are they thinking about math? Are they able to apply the core concepts that they learned? Are they able to apply it now to a word problem that requires 2 steps? Johnny has 5 cents, his brother had, right? So it's going to take time to build it in, but I think that this pendulum swing has been a bit of the problem. What kid doesn't need to know their times table to be more efficient when they're then working on word problems? So it's not one over the other, it's all of them. And that's what we're endeavoring to do with staff, is to give them the tools to be able to meet the needs of the learners in their classroom, as varied as those are, with a variety of resources. And so it's going to take time to build those resources in place. And so I'm hearing all the feedback that you're sharing with me. And if I'm honest, it's not new things that I'm like, oh, we should have thought of that. We need to build it in though. We've got to work on that. So thank you though. Thank you.
Question to either Mr. Putnam or yourself. Does the government know that you don't have the resources, that you don't have iPads, and you don't have this? Does the government even know that?
So I think it's a two-part question. Because part of it is as a school administrator, you have to build your budget and make a 1, 3, and 5-year plan. And so in that plan, you determine, okay, we as a board purchased grade 6 to 8 licenses and we provided K-2 resources. The grade 3 to 5 schools had to fund as part of their school budget. Okay, do we have laptops from the device rollout? Do we have a need for other? So they have to build a budget and make a plan and roll it out within their school, right? So the ministry recognized that there was need for digital resources and they recognized there was need for staffing to support the rollout of such an intense focus. And the other pieces can be done too. And so we're working with CFO Putnam to get that done.
If I could, Mr. Chair, the answer is yes. The ministry is aware that there are constraints. To be honest with you, the money that they've got right now is all tied up in provincial bargaining and dealing with the unions. We have raised with them that the current IT budgets, including the director's submissions, business officials, and the academic, we all have organizations as well, trustee associations. We continue to bring forward that, there's new pressures and emerging in the area of technology, not just supporting curriculum rollout, but when you think of cybersecurity or you think of equity initiatives and device strategies, like they're aware that what we're getting right now is actually just keeping our current infrastructure, the lights on, the wide area networks, our data centers and all that, but we don't really have anything to thrust us forward. Modernizing education and technology really has been left to the local systems. And we're kind of getting squeezed out of the ability to do that, which is counterintuitive. The only other thing through Mr. Chair, I'll just remind that the province dropped this. They're always dropping things. This was like late last spring, right? We're even just mobilizing. You did well just to get all your staff hired and in place for September. And it is, again, it's going to be a movement, not an event, but that has also been a pushback to the ministry, which is it's unfair for you to drop something with an expectation for September. Now, it's one thing to drop it in the spring and say, start working on it, but the expectation clearly is that we were able to snap our fingers, pivot, and immediately be delivering at a high level on all of this, along with the de-streaming rollout, along with everything else that's going on. Learning recovery comes back to the literacy component of being able to read and understand the question. To your point, John, it's really complicated, but yeah, the ministry's hearing the feedback. It's not a matter, Joe, of just throwing resources at it. We're not going to spend our way out of it. We got to change the practice first.
I just wanted to comment on this because you are proposing a mathematics activity for achievement plan. We wanted to suggest for the CSPC for St. Victor's School to create a new textbooks, or even before we wanted a replacement of the old textbooks. Because here you are proposing something that is maybe part of a budget, right? This involves cost. This digital resources involve cost, and therefore each student has a cost evaluation or cost plan. So instead of proposing for these digital resources, why not propose something like a definite, a physical textbook for each student? Because the teacher is focused on the topics on the textbook as well as the students. If this is presented to the teachers and the students, their mind is focused on many things. They have to study a textbook and then the digital resources, which is different from the textbook because textbooks is only geared towards their level. For example, my daughter is in grade 8, therefore we need a textbook, a new textbook, because the present textbook is already, I consider, century old, 2000. The other one, the English, is 19th century. So what they wanted is really a physical textbook, and then this textbook will be taken up every month. But with these digital resources, I think these are only part of the research or something like a resource or dictionary to help them resolve their mathematics problem. But for now, what is really needed is for a textbook for each of the students. They wanted something new. So if you could provide us a new textbook, which I remember I proposed to the chairman for a new textbook for the grade 8.
So I'm gonna stop you there,
Yeah.
because when around this table, we don't individualize schools,
Yes.
right? We do things as a whole,
Mhm.
right? So we don't look at the need of one particular school as itself. And again, Superintendent Dixon is applying the plan to the overall board, right? So the conversation we're having tonight is for everyone, not just one school. So when your commentary, you're just speaking of state, which is
Yes,
something
sir.
we're trying to keep away from the state, because we don't want to single out schools and see and show what they're lacking or what they have more of. Do you understand?
Yes, sir. I'm thinking also that it's not only for the school, but I'm speaking on behalf of Ward 7, that they also need a new textbook. So my suggestion is for the facilitators to propose a new textbook aside from the digital resources. Thank you.
Perfect. I'm gonna turn it over to Ida.
11 days of Christmas. So I have a question. As a parent and not as a trustee, but it could intermingle. We have this wonderful new website that we have up and running. And I'm wondering why we're not using the website more to give resources to parents. For example, math curriculum, grade 1, grade 3, grade 5, grade 8, grade 12, I don't care what grade you're in. There's some teachers that send you home with a lot of homework, some teachers that send you home with no homework. The parents are at home saying, can I supplement? Or, oh my God, there's a test on Wednesday. Do I need to get you an emergency tutor? Like sample quizzes, sample tests. Like, is there any way that we could work?
I got a motion to that.
Okay, beautiful. Okay, I'm gonna just pass it over to John. So you have it coming up?
John, okay.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, I'm gonna try and summarize. So I always think about stuff comes here, what do we do about it? Otherwise, just discussion. Same in the trustee boardroom. Unless you make a recommendation or a motion, it's just talk. So my three-part motion is that the CPIC recommends the board to provide resources to parents on the TCDSB website year-round, including videos and tools to support the math curriculum. 2, that the board consider compiling texts or workbooks as a physical resource to support the math curriculum in our schools. 3, that the board review access and funding for delivery and teaching resources so schools are not forced to fundraise to cover the fundamentals. I'll write that and give it to you.
I second that motion.
Joe, are we done the presentation and are we in the right process to do a motion?
Seconds, and I can do it, or I can open it for this.
I think that I'll hear the motion again and then hear from the floor. I think we kind of discussed 1 and 2 and 3 is perhaps not for me, but.
Yeah, so 1 is provide resources to parents on the TCDS website year-round, including videos, compiling text or workbooks for consistency as a physical resource to support the math curriculum.
You wouldn't say digital, you mean a hard copy?
Yes. Physical. Yeah. 3, that the board review access and funding for the delivery and teaching resources of the math curriculum so schools are not forced to fundraise to cover the fundamentals. That goes to the comment of the aspect of, I've heard from multiple schools, the fact that they say, I'm out of money, parent council, can you fund X, Y, Z? Because I blew my whole money on printing. It's happened multiple times.
Happened to us.
Okay, so John and then Rochelle second the motion.
Yeah.
Okay, is there
I just want to propose a tweak.
an amendment
To
to
your
the
point,
motion?
an amendment to the motion. John, instead of that it be considered, because there's a consideration and there's no necessary action behind the consideration, so that it be reviewed and brought back. I don't know the formal way to say it.
Well, our recommendations go to the Board of Trustees.
Right.
And they're the ones that would say, that's a good idea. Staff, tell us more about that or come back to us.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you.
One more, would you rather put in there like a hard copy and digital copy? Like, wouldn't that make more sense? Because some people don't want to, like, if the budget isn't there for printed in all these schools, At least there's a digital copy for everyone, because that's where everything's going. It's either going digital and hard. And that,
Through the chair, so I can address that. So the resources on the parent TCDSV website is already under work, so okay. And number two, compiling the resources, I spoke about that, that Math Up has a physical workbook that is a companion to the digital resource. The digital resource is already funded by the ministry, so that's something that's already money spent and that's out there. And we are already considering the Math Up workbook. Some schools have purchased it already, but it comes down to school budget.
I have a question for the mover of the motion. John, Mr. Del Grande, what about all of the resources that we have, but the students don't have their login numbers and PIN? Should we make like a point number 4 to make sure that parents are getting the usernames and passwords for the software?
Can I see?
Kind of.
Can I see?
I'm not amending it. I'm giving him a suggestion.
The username and password is the child's like, it's their email address and like they usually get that from the teacher. It comes from the teacher. Well, there needs to be a better system because I'll tell you, for the first 2 months of this year, it was like, oh no, the teacher gave that to you. Oh no, they didn't. Oh yes, they did. And it was like chasing a piece of paper for 2 months. And like, so especially depending on the age of the child and, you know, like you don't give a grade 4 or a 9-year-old boy a piece of paper and expect him to get home to his mother because it's not gonna happen. I think there has to be a better way of getting that at the beginning of the year to the parent that this is, I mean, I know we're going off math here, but to your point, because then it's the access, right? The parent being able to have that and access things right away is the important part.
And that's an IT thing.
There has to be a way of getting it securely to the parent. Like there has to be.
The format is shared on the website so parents know where to, if it's, you know, because they are different. And I know part of the issue with the tools were some of them use their Google ID, some of them use their board email, some of them use single sign-on. So, but where can they find, parents go to find that information to know how to log on? And
Even like Remind app, could use the Remind app.
We could house it perhaps on the website.
So there are a lot of opportunities. I'm gonna give John while he's finishing that off, because one of the points, and so I'm a student of mathematics. That's my undergrad. So having this conversation and hearing the core and the med mass, that's that's my jam. But at the same time, this group of parents is serious because we're trying to close that circle and make sure parents get involved. And at the student achievement, when you brought forward, right? Trustee LaPretti made the comment that she hired a tutor to teach her math before she tutored her grade 5 son.
Expensive too.
And
That's
you
another problem.
and Kimberly, you brought up the fact that you went to a family math club for your children, right?
Here in our board, I went.
Oh,
to
here,
family math
oh, it's
thing,
here.
Yeah.
So one of the pieces too is because I go and CPIC's really good at putting on webinars and Zoom things. We've had a lot of success with virtual presentations. And we have these wonderful facilitators, right? Who are teaching the teachers. Is there some way we can make something to close that circle and teach the parents, even again, not full out, but even give them like some tips so that when they sit with their child, especially when they're doing math, because the minute a parent gets frustrated with math, right, that child is very frustrated with math. And I guess our goal here on this table is to make that parent confident. Even if you don't know what you're doing, if you can pretend to be confident and sit next to your child.
Make it until you make it.
Right. Right? And your child sees it in you that you're there and you're willing to put the effort. It's that trickle-down effect. Because we know the teachers are doing it in class. We know the facilitators are co-teaching and co-planning and doing it in class. When we come home, we need to close that circle. Right? So if there's something that your department can do, because I know the trustees that night at Student Achievement, Trustee Kennedy was up in arms about using CPIC and whatever resources we had to make stuff happen, parent modules. we're very happy to be part of something virtual. Okay.
You can do PSAs.
Okay,
Sorry.
so I have the, okay. Does you guys want me to reread this? Please.
Yeah. Okay. One, this all CPIC recommends to the board. Provide resources to parents on the TCDSB website year-round, including videos and tools to support the math curriculum. Two, that the board consider compiling text workbooks as a physical resource for consistency to support the math curriculum. Three, that the board review access and funding for delivery and teaching of math so schools are not forced to fundraise to cover the fundamentals such as printing and technology. And four, I call the Lopretti Amendment, that parents be provided any access codes and passwords for student digital resources.
That was seconded by Rochelle.
Can I do an addendum to the addendum? In the beginning of the year. Give the passwords access in the beginning of the year.
Thanksgiving, guys.
Yeah. Addendum. I don't know how to say that. It's just like.
It doesn't have to be in the first day, but like within the first 2 weeks would be ideal so that we can get.
They understand, okay.
And just so, yeah, just so you know this works, our recommendation to the board, the trustees can throw it away, do something, change it, but that's basically how stuff moves through the.
When our motion goes to board, we should all go there and just stare at them. Yes.
Like this.
Is there any more conversation around the motion? I'm gonna just keep going through. We're at the end of our presentation. We're gonna, lots more to do, everyone. So anyone opposed to the motion?
Well, not opposed, just a quick question. She addressed the first two where, first one was there and the second one's in the works. So they're already being worked on. So you guys are putting a motion that the first two are already being done.
Well, when it goes to board, superintendent will.
So you want to push it again? Okay, you want to do it again, but.
I do think as well, these recommendations are aligned with work that has to be done anyways, and things that aren't going to be used to work. As we just have these conversations, whether it's through Superintendent Dixon's updates, whether it's through budget conversations, like I think it aligns well. I think it just supports the movement. I was going to say the other thing when you mentioned, if I could through Mr. Chair, province, the other challenge we have is they funded staff for facilitators and digital resources, but no money for the actual release time of the training. So that actually is going to be one of our, and I'm not slamming because in fairness, I know at least my colleagues on the staff side at the ministry are also receiving directives very last minute that are politically driven, that aren't necessarily had the time to flesh themselves through and have infrastructure. So one of our discussions as well is we need to shift resources actually towards the math as part of our budget priorities. It may mean that we have to redirect. We're not in a position to add. But a lot of what you're recommending here are things that we're already starting to talk about. So I think they'll be well received at board. And I don't think staff will be put in a position where we would be speaking against or unsupportive of something that's coming.
Well, it would just reinforce, like you just said, that parent CPIC is supporting these and we're engaged in it.
Yeah. Okay. So.
It's not a.
But I'm gonna push through the motion. We're gonna finish.
Yes.
Yeah, that's why I put my hand out because that's what I'm doing.
Okay, so no one's against, so motion carries. So I'm just gonna now, for receipt of the presentation. And a seconder. Okay, none.
Sorry, Mr. Putnam, I got my next paper for your presentation.
So, receipt, thank you.
Briefly.
And sharing with us again. We appreciate it. As parents, again, the more information we can get, the more we can kind of.
Amazing dialogue.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay, so we're going into our third presentation for the evening. CFO Ryan Putnam will be giving us an update.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, this evening's just informal, just to come to you with a couple quick updates. I hadn't had a chance to get here until now this school year, so I know you've had lots of different agenda items. So school budgets has been a topic of interest. It's been even intersecting tonight. I think that one of the things that I do want to convey is that our principals in the block budgets, they are dealing with pretty tight budgets this year. Okay. I think there's gonna need to be a little bit, and we've been working with principals, whether it's at our K-12 meetings or in just local conversations around making sure that they understand that, like, how we hear it, how tight the budgets are and how they really need to focus and plan and prioritize. In fairness, we also need to provide support for that, all right? Because, we have, principals that are new to the roles. It is a little bit tighter money this year. We are looking at how we can support things centrally, but I just wanted to flag that, yeah, school budgets are a little bit tighter. One of the reasons it might be a little tighter is we've had a practice over the years of just rolling over anything that was unspent from the previous year and it rolls to that school. This year, we instead have, with the support of the trustees, packaged that into two different ways of distributing the funds. One was to create additional funds for our EPAN or our poverty support program. And that's a separate allocation that goes to targeted schools. And then as well to make sure that every school received an extra 20% top up, just to make sure that they were all starting off the year with an extra set of funds. I actually just on the previous discussion was just starting an email to Kim and a few others to say we should probably look at even just providing a supplement for the printing costs this year. Not sure where from just yet, but I am seeing that alignment. But so we are hearing the voice from the schools. I think one of the things that the principals have been asking for us to help support is actually with the school secretaries, the support at that level as well. So in the finance area, we are building out a very intentional school support team. We are shifting from a model of pushing it out and assuming everybody, knows what they're doing. And again, we're coming back from the pandemic and from COVID, and we've had, transiency, and we've had new people in new roles, and we have, a lot of things. So we just need to recognize that the schools need support. We need to work with those that might not be as familiar with our practices or are new to our systems. We need to make sure that we're giving the principals reports and access to the reports that are simple for them. Okay, just because it makes sense to my team in SAP doesn't mean that, or as CSPC and supporting that work as well, right? Like, let's distill it down, even myself. Like, there's only a few numbers that my team really needs to provide to me that matter in the bucket full of numbers that they're working through. We need to help our principals and our secretaries with that. So there's a school support division that is being built out. Within that, we are creating a, I'll just wait too. Sorry, Joe. I'll just pause for a second. Sorry, just so you can facilitate. Within the school support group, we've identified that our CSPC chairs and treasurers would benefit from more direct support. So within that division that we're building out, I've been working with Superintendent Peterson as well around balancing, or I guess sharing really, the efforts of parent engagement with supporting the financial side of schools. So the CSPC, we've actually got a position that we've created within that division that will be dedicated to supporting our CSPCs with their reporting requirements. And we will be ready to roll that out in the new year, that position. So I think that hopefully will be well received. I know there's a lot of work that can be done to just make things a little easier. Really positive. I'm sure, Ryan, you've shared back how positive, or maybe I don't want to steal your thunder for later, but how positive the report back was this year in terms of CSPC reporting.
Comment on it now, CFO Putnam. I think in terms of the CSPC financial report, it went to board last, Thursday?
Feels like forever ago.
So a couple things from it. Our numbers last year in terms of reporting was 154 schools reported, and then our data was driven from that. This year was 188 schools that reported, and that's quite a big push through collaboration between my department and field SOs who were really driving that push. So hopefully next year, obviously our goal always is 100%. Those 10 few schools were probably those with principals who were on leave and changeovers and things like that. So
That's impressive.
I'm actually
That's really
quite happy
impressive.
that we got that far. From that data, in working with CFO Putnam, we're building out the department on the business side. I'm specifically looking at a governance conflict mediation role. We're kind of working very closely with field SOs when there's a conflict that arises in the CSPC, we do it together. So we're kind of, in terms of senior team really focusing on CSPCs and putting really financial resources into working with our council. So I'm really happy with the direction that we're going, and it's taking off the plate of my department. Typically we're educators, so we're not the finance group. So we're being supported by people who understand the finance, whereas my part can focus on the governance people part. So
I appreciate that.
I think it's working well.
So with that, I guess, sorry, I kind of meandered through about three different pieces. One, sensitivity to school budgets. Absolutely. We have an emphasis at Education Council through Associate Director Delamore to really work with our principals this year to help lighten their load when it comes to the management pieces, whether it's the financial pieces, so that because it's just right now, it's just a really challenging role. They're dealing on a daily basis with absences. So one of the focal points has been school support, recognizing school budgets are tight. The EPAN allocations were redistributed this year. I know there's been some questions and some sensitivities as that's rolled out to the local level, and questions from CSPCs to their principals to their SOs. We're looking at those on a case-by-case basis, but it was a very intentional research-based adjustment to that model. And then when it comes to the CSPC the support model out of my department, what we're going to have ultimately is that we're going to have an officer available to each school, a finance officer. I'm going to have 4 of them, so I'm going to be able to operate on a 50-to-1 ratio. Typically, we only had 1.5 FTE assigned to that. We're actually going to have 4 individuals. They're all going to be former secretaries. I already have 2 of the 4 have been hired in, and immediately they're already just providing. They're able to talk. They can talk the talk. They can understand the pressures that are happening in the school. They can identify training needs. They can become more intimate on a 50-to-1 ratio and be able to actually support and know their schools. Otherwise, when you're supporting 100 to 200 schools, it's just a school number. It's just a school name. And then the CSPC piece will be tasked as supervisor of CSPC reporting, so it will have carriage over all of the reporting requirements, primarily finance, but working with Superintendent Peterson as well at USAPIC, USAPRO, CSPC reporting. I know there's a standing recommendation from CPIC last year to look at a financial software solution as well. We're studying a couple of models there, whether it's moving everybody to the single board system or providing a second as a choice, but then at least requiring one or the other. This new role will offer us assistance there, and we are going to take some observations and opportunities. We're taking stock of those just in terms of all aspects of school funds, and we'll start working our way through those on a priority basis. So I'll pause there because I have one other update, but it's more financial. It's not about this. To you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so my question, since we're on the topic of CSPCs, and mine goes to S10 policy appendix B. When it comes to e-transfers with CSPCs, because right now we're still doing the check, double signing, all that stuff. And there really isn't, it's kind of in the gray area because there really isn't anything that says you can and you can't do it. But we know, like, we're in 2023 now, and we know we're in the digital age. And I did put together a motion which is going to come in January regarding this. Okay, some CSPCs obviously are very active. So they do a lot. There's a lot of money coming and going. And is there a way that we could possibly reframe Appendix B to include e-transfers in a way where, because we know we have to have double signatures on the checks, but would we be able to have the treasurer would then send out to the chair and the principal and get the okays for e-transfers that have to go out, that have to go for payments for events or cookie sales or whatever that it may be?
I know where you're going with this. So here's what I'm going to suggest is part of the mandate of the individual in this role will be to reflect on practice and look at balancing, modernizing with also strengthening some of the controls that are in place right now. Reflecting on and balancing autonomy of CSPC operations with centralization in terms of alignment for consistency of practice, not for control. I think my team would have varying degrees of comfort with us moving in that direction. It may also be moot depending on whether or not we reflect and have everything moved to the board's system, the CAB system, which would provide provide for a lot of those mechanisms and would have a lot of those transactions done through the office. In support of the CSPC, or looking at a different model of equipping CSPCs with a QuickBooks or something, and then looking at the practices of how are we making payments, how are we making transactions. So I would suggest that certainly a motion could come forward. My response to the boardroom, and when I'm going to go to audit committee in February with some initial observations and recommendations and risk identifications, is we're moving towards balancing those two. And so, yeah, when if that was a recommendation to come from CPIC, I'd say that's part of what we're taking into consideration. Open to making things easier, but right now I just also have to make sure that we have things under a proper infrastructure. Ultimately, this board has operated with varying degrees of separation and autonomy. But when it rolls up to the treasurer, ultimately everything's under the auspice of the board, and that's my responsibility to the board. So we're gonna have to look at the whole environment. Open to it though. Haven't explored it deeply yet.
You made a comment about the school cash the school accounts or CSPC accounts through school cash online. So are we saying that those accounts that are still outside of that, like, because some CSPCs haven't rolled over into the school cash online, is that something that's going to become mandatory for every school to do? Or can they still be?
We haven't had those discussions yet. Those are things that need to be considered or contemplated around what will be in the best interest of the board and its overall control environment while still providing the CSPCs what they need for flexibility. So that's part of absolutely our January to March sort of timeframe. I'm targeting April for some possible policy review, including S10. We're also looking at fundraising in schools, other policies that would align. And so we'll need to come back to this table anyways for feedback and direction. But I think an important element of that will be having not only the CSPC reporting position, but also the senior manager responsible for the whole student support team to really offer some observations. Like, for example, even with our schools, not everybody banks with CIBC. That's okay. It could be a proximity thing, but then it doesn't allow us line of sight to be able to provide support. So we're gonna balance all of those between optimal and practical, and also what's the word, honoring or really respecting sort of legacy practice and not messing around necessarily with the control. When I use the word controls, it's really about creating an environment of controls that then allows everybody to operate with the autonomy that they'd like to have. I think we also need to reestablish the lines of reporting between the principals and the CSPCs. I think that's got to be strengthened reciprocally as well. I think we have an opportunity to do that. But your question was more around, are we open to modernizing more fluid practices? Yes. I don't know that we'll ever get to the point where we'll mandate something unless there's a real gap, but we may offer strong recommendations about what would be best practice, what would be easiest, and I think we'll just have to go through a process of really discerning what is best. I'm not the best one to answer that. I think the individual in this role, along with my team, are probably closer to it, but we'll bring the recommendations back to this table.
I'll go first and I'll go second.
Side note to what Brian you said only certain number of CSPCs have been doing the reporting. But the number has gone up. So what's happening to the CSPCs that haven't done the reporting?
So that grouping, I think, was a group that was probably about 10 schools where, and this is our highest number in the last couple of years that have done reporting, and they have an obligation to do it. That grouping was retirements of principals that we weren't able to get the information for, principals who were on sick leave, just those, there were reasonings for each that I don't want to get into, but our goal is always 100%. We got 188 this time. We'll continue to work. 196.
197. Pretty good. I think the other piece to remember too is there might be a couple that don't have an active CSPC or.
Well, we did have 100% of councils. That doesn't mean that some tapered off towards the end.
That's also the goal then of this movement, is to make sure that we're getting to 100%. Also need to look at the policy. Even when we're getting 100% reporting into Superintendent Peterson's office, we might not be getting full support when my team has to do reviews or audits. We're not, we need to do a scan of what might be out there that's maybe not necessarily been disclosed or reported. Occasionally we'll get the odd foundation or something that's been set up and structured as well. So there's things that we need to look at. So it's a movement, but to get to 188 from 150 something the year prior was good buy-in. I think the other piece is equipping. Those that maybe didn't submit, maybe we've not been providing the support. And I think that's the other piece as well.
Yeah, just to make a comment, like when the board want to know what's happening with their money, like. 100%. Just say.
That would be why school support is one of my three. As CFO of this board, we got to focus on our deficit, our budget. We are focusing on relationship with principals and then focusing directly on school support this year. Those are my three priorities. Each of my team has their own, but those are mine that I'm accountable to the director.
May I also propose for a sort of a change on the presentation of the financial report to include the fundraising activities of the elementary and high school, because based on my research, I think there are only 3 schools who are doing fundraising. One is in Victor School, the other in where is the trustee Marcus. It's about 19,000 each. So if these are available for the students, and therefore we considered each school as a branch of the main or the head office, and therefore the approved funding 19,000 will increase, including the fundraising of about 60,000. So we can control the funds, since these funds are coming from parents, from us, and then so it can resolve also our problem with textbooks, so we can immediately use the funds. Because the problem is they couldn't use the funds because they are controlled by, like this, there's an activity or an achievement plan, and they wanted to come in. They wanted to get the budget, they wanted to get something from the fundraising. This is what I'm thinking of, because they couldn't get funding from this or from the other committee. So therefore, we present those fundraising activities. So it would include a big, huge amount. And then we indicate a proper disclosure of the revenue, whether this funding is coming from the government, from the taxes, or so if the taxes, will these taxes be used for the salary of the parents or the employees within CPIC or
So,
within?
Ira, you're speaking to our financial documents?
Yes, sir.
But you're also you're talking about CSPC fundraising.
Yes, I'm suggesting to include them so that we have control, because sir, here, it would mean.
I don't want to interrupt, but so at CPIC, that document shows those are the funds that we control, that we can, as a committee, we can speak to. The funds at the CSPC level, that's their funds at the local level that they speak to.
But isn't it, they are part of we are at the head office and they are at the lower level. So all their funds should be pulled in one.
No.
All those financial numbers, that's what the reports that the board's looking for, so that they have an overall picture of how much fundraising is being done.
Yeah, but it seems that this funding, especially the carryover, these are locked investments maybe. These are used maybe for the school furnitures, investments which are locked, but so we couldn't use them. So what funds?
Sorry, I think I need to clarify, and maybe also CFO Putnam can jump in. There's kind of three sources of funding. So one is ministry that goes to the board, that's then allocated to schools as a block budget. And then the school parent council is its own entity that can do fundraising, that they control how those funds are used within the guidelines of the ministry at that level. So certain things they can and cannot do with the fundraising money at an individual school. And then CPIC is the parent representative voice to the board. And we have our own budget of money that comes in from the ministry that we use for CPIC events, but we can't control the fundraising of a local CSPC.
That makes it fettered.
They're separate.
Actually, I think I'll take it this way. The work of CPIC has a different mandate and doesn't, the CSPCs don't report to the CPIC, but the CPIC does provide support to the CSPCs. I think that's an important element. I will say the only thing, forgive me for the correction, is the local CSPCs through the fundraising policy absolutely will do the fundraising. One of the things we need to make sure is that we're continuing to align and that the principal's providing ultimately the final direction for where we're going to take any local level funding, whether it's school fund, school budget, school funds that are generated through the school or CSPC related. I think one of the things that we're going to strive towards is creating a financial profile for each school. I would like to move away from the monthly report. We're reporting everybody's business to everybody. We've now moved to a ward-based system. I think that we still need to brief our trustees on their ward activity in the area SOs, but at the local level, and this is a conversation that'll be had at Directors Council and back at board, possibly not at board, but with recommendations to trustees to support or an awareness, is making sure that that local level dynamic, the appropriate exchange of information between the CSPCs. We have CSPCs right now that at their monthly meetings aren't providing financial reports. There's not disclosure to the principal, or we'll have the principal where maybe they don't even know the information, or it's just a dynamic where they're not sharing. I think we need to work on that element through the parent engagement, the partnership of the planning. All right, right now, the report that we have been sending out for finance monthly has been meant to serve a purpose just to make sure that the principals know that their information has at least been passed on to the chairs. But again, I struggle with stigmatization of schools. I struggle with, each school having its own priorities, and really each community, it's only their business about their business. It is the trustee in the area SO's business to know what is going on in their full ward. But I think when we strengthen that local, it's almost, I'm calling it a placemat profile. It would have everything from what's available at this point in time in the block to what's in the school funds to what is the CSPC. It'll have a little note in the corner. You speak of transiency or change in principles, where here is the school priority right now. We want to buy an AdFi card. Here's the CSPC's priority. They're trying to fund for the playground, whatever it would be, that it's captured and updated monthly. It's available to the area SO for their monitoring visits. It's available for the monthly meeting with the CSPCs for exchange. Where we have barriers, we'll work through it with the school support team. So I actually thank you for that question, because it prompted something, which is, I know there's a real sort of legacy and this attachment to this monthly report, which, I do appreciate. We've at least now moved it from all 200 schools are now just board-based in reporting. And I think that's a conversation still to respect the local decisions of the local school. It's not a lack of transparency. The transparency should be between the school, the principal, the CSPC, not necessarily amongst all schools within the whole. Respectfully, that's my opinion and my practice. We'll get there through a conversation.
And in addition, Treasurer, I want also to suggest, I'm so sorry, the CFO, to also approve some of the budget or some of the expenses for digital, such as those purchase of laptop or computer for the schools because they lack resources. And especially the Toronto Public Library has already closed and printing isn't allowed. So therefore they need computer room with computer laptops and printers, aside from textbooks, and also an accounting software for their school. So if there are only three schools who are doing fundraising, so we are suggesting also an accounting software for them and for CPIC.
So on that, we absolutely have software supports. It's something that's come forward as a recommendation to make sure all CSPCs have that. I would suggest that almost every school is fundraising. We do capture that data. I capture it centrally for my needs and my use. I capture what the school funds and their revenue is for their needs. So we can look at the overall, and it's been a work in progress, because as I said, we have not necessarily got a complete picture due to different reasons. And we're working towards having full capture so that we can really understand each community school financial capacity and their needs. It's been very difficult to have a conversation of how to true up and supplement. The EPAN conversation was very stretched and challenged as well, because if you don't have good data and good metrics, or then you really can't make good decisions. And so I thank you for that, because absolutely what we do require is to have a common software solution or set of softwares, common practice. We have that. We just need to make sure that everybody's using it. Okay, and to move forward in a manner that's gives us what we need for support and control from board office, and then gives the schools the tools and the CSPCs the tools they need to be able to then do what they need to do. And once it's rolling, it'll roll. But yeah, no, I appreciate some of your research, but I would say that the majority of schools are fundraising. All schools have their own school bank accounts with their own school funds. But we just need to provide a different type of support to make sure everybody is meeting our needs and expectations, and there's consistency of practice. Question.
Yeah, so thanks for that. The software's been around for almost 3 years, that recommendation. It's kind of been sitting around in the ether, because that would help provide, because I wear 2 hats, right? I was chair of the audit committee for this board, so I've seen every weird and wonderful thing that came through there that we need to kind of put the right controls around. But then we also need to make sure that the schools that are well-oiled machines are not detrimented in terms of what they're doing, right? And then get to us to a stage where, you know, everyone's got the tools to be able to do the things, because we got some schools that will post their financials monthly, right? Bing, bang, boom, like right out of QuickBooks, whatever it is. So there's other schools that they struggle to get accounts on those things, but that's where then we need to provide support where it needs to be so that we've got that continuum and moving it through. Right now, then that being said, for the schools that are doing a lot of activities and are doing things on their own within a proper manner, there's still a lot of barriers that they have, right? So getting reports in terms of what's happening from donations, what's happening in terms of breakdown of EFT deposits, SAP transactions that are going through their CSPC accounts. These things are not available through the CSPC chair view of the accounts. I'm sure these reports could be built, because the problem is it's not that you can't get them, because the principal could pull them, but we want to remove from principals the unvalue add activities, right? Me asking the principal to go do something is 10 minutes that he has to go on the computer, do a thing, print a thing, email it to me, or whoever it is, which is unnecessary for the fact that if the school council knows what they're doing, they can do their things, update their financials, and move forward. Other schools, again, more support. So I'm hoping that this role that you're going to have is going to address these things. I'm trying to make a motion to say business services should look at these supports and reports that will help councils self-serve. Am I hearing this in openness? Because I remember also having a conversation with some of your staff that was about these issues, and it kind of like they was well received, but then nothing happened to it.
I think there's a couple things, John. Is we have to look at, first of all, through this, not just through this position, the broader team. There's more than just this position that's supporting. Is we can go a number of paths. I mean, many, I won't say most, many school boards often need to consolidate where there isn't separate accounts at the whole time. It's all in the one bank account. It's just separating the financial system between school funds and CSPC funds. We're not positioned right now because of, I think, the capacity of our school offices to necessarily have every school, to your point, their varying degrees of capacity, not just with CSPCs, but within administration and with the secretary and their comfort level. When you get to talk about a well-oiled machine at the school level, we're all operating on the KEF platform. We had a single bank account, which I'm not suggesting we're going there, but this is optimal. This is what I had in practice where I was previously. And you have the school office and the secretary managing that in the infrastructure. And you have the CSPC with its clear direction, and there's fluidity with the principal, and everything's operating in harmony. And the monthly reporting is happening properly and the transactional is happening, then it's moving right along. We're nowhere close to that. So I think to your point, you've been encouraging, at least if nothing else, how can we move the chains and give people the information they need? I think the request for the access to SAP, I weighed in on that and said, no, that's not somewhere we're going to go. I think we also have to find a balance between, there's the transactional piece that the CSPCs need access to, and there's just the desire for information, I think, that falls back to the principal prerogative. And I think we need to have a conversation and make sure that through Ryan and through the area SOs, that we have that fluidity of communication during the CSPC meetings, a standard consistent practice of reporting both ways. But I think we also have to start to bring some balance into line of what's expected for the principal to have in schools and what they are otherwise managing on a day-to-day basis, which is entirely of their own discretion. Sorry, John.
Sorry, just real quickly, to your point about the consistency back and forth between the CSPCs and the principals, that's very important. And I hear that a lot from a lot of CSPC chairs, that they ask for information is just not given to them. For whatever reason, I don't know, but it becomes very frustrating when you are trying to put your budget together, or you're trying to do your financials, and you just can't get that information. That should not have to happen. There's no secrets, I would think. Everything's transparent. So it's just, you know, they ask, they should receive.
Well, I would say this. I've had the opportunities and observations report available to me about 3 or 4 months ago, staff had drafted it. But it's what led us to then saying the first step is actually, the next step is to get the school support team and the CSBC reporting position in place. We'll then allow them with their expertise to revisit the observations, opportunities, call it risks, call it recommendations. We have all of that. A lot of what we're talking about here are things that are already being identified and considered, John, things that you saw in your chair when your time was a trustee, to what all of you around the table are raising for us now. I think we're very close to being able to start moving forward. Again, what I'm going to commit to this room is, one, it'll all come back through here for dialogue and feedback. And secondly, I think we have to balance. We really want to honor what's working well, not necessarily turn the world upside down. With, you know, ironically, the more we set consistency of practice in an environment, we call it controls environment, actually the easier it is to decentralize, give everybody the autonomy they desire. Where we're really struggling right now is the expectation of communication between, you know, the board office, the schools, and the CSPCs. You know, who's providing guidance and direction around what's happening with different pockets of funds, working in partnership, right? But creating that right balance. The principal does not report to the CSPC, they provide information to the CSPC. And I think we need to strike a good balance with that, because a lot of the requests and the challenges that we're having is that our principals, I think Ryan would be able to better speak to it, of the nature of the information that will be sort of appropriate to flow. Sometimes the requests or the expectations from individual CSPCs might be more than is. Yes, there's no secrets and transparency. But respectfully, the principals are managing those buildings, and those are their budgets, no different than we have here at the board office. There are important responsibilities to make sure that the community is aware of what they do have available, what are their priorities. And then they can align, the CSPC can align with those priorities. It can tie into the school improvement plan, which can tie. We have some work to do about that alignment, but it comes back to communication.
So Ryan, let me give you an example. That report on getting the CSPC transactions that hit SAP. I had to ask Veronica, who then asked business services, who then printed out, then emailed me. Probably that whole chain took hours to go through, how much time to pull, where if I had gone in and pressed print, I could have had our financials updated and be done. And I need that report every month. So it would make no sense for the board or anybody to facilitate doing that 12 times 188 schools, right? So like, I'm gonna make a motion that CPIC recommend to the board that business services further support CSPC fundraising activities by providing direct report access to CSPC SAP transactions, donation details, and breakdown of EFT deposits by activity. 2, that the board build fundraising and financial FAQs on the board website, because even as CSPCs and stuff, we get a lot of questions that come up, and we need a common place to put the answers so that it's not the same question being asked multiple. Like, how many times I've been asked as a chair, as a former CPIC, as a WAPC, about what can our fundraising go towards or not towards. I point to the policy, but like, again, simple places to get answers. And the 3rd, that principal training continue on providing transparency on school budgets and financials to parent councils, because it's still a gap. Right? I know in the schools that I've worked with, because they know what they're doing and they see things and they get the reports and know what's going on. In other cases, the principal says Zippo in terms of what their school budget is, and even cases where they feel offended that you're even asking them what they're spending their money on in the school block budget.
Before I agree or disagree on the motion, I just want to clarify, is there anything private in these documents that there's a reason why it has to go through this whole loop chain of people?
Actually, through you, Mr. Chair. So I'm happy to receive the motion, and I can actually tell you a lot of it aligns with the direction we're going. It seems like, you know, there's any consternation. Respecting that this is now a priority and we're going to have the appropriate infrastructure and staff in place, I think a lot of this will happen. My response would be no. I think respectfully, though, the principal does not need to account for every dollar back to the CSPC. What it does, the principal does need to account for is, I have a budget, and here's my priorities, and here's how they're going to be carried out for the year. I think it's helpful, transparent reporting to say we're struggling, we're running higher on printing costs, things that might then interrupt maybe earlier plans. But it's not, it's never an expectation, nor do I consider appropriate that there will be a full line by line that would ever be provided at CSPC in the block budget. I think there's certain numbers and metrics that are important. But again, that can evolve as we have conversation. The access, sure, you can table it. I'm going to be going to, and I think it requires conversation instead around what's the broader solution to consistency of practice, to the reporting, to reflecting whether KEV is the solution, the one-stop solution, when there is line of sight, whether or not we have the capacity to support it, to the monthly reporting that's expected. I thank you, John, for wanting to relieve, you're right, finance staff, just a minor change is even how, sorry, Ryan, I'm going informal, how we're even rolling the pick and the pro stuff out this year, which is let's just get the money out and then have it reported back on through a report back, rather than having my team literally transacting multiple transactions against pick or pro out to every school. Like those are time-intensive touches. So anything, this group here, and I think through the CSPC reporting position, that person will be tasked with taking all this type of feedback, reflecting on the motion, table it. I'm not big on the access going any farther than it needs to till we settle actually what information is actually appropriate.
I think I can comment. One of the parts is around training videos and materials, right? So I think one of the conversations Joe and I had at moving some of the, you know how we have the portal that's only access to the chair's email. Some of that doesn't need to be that way and can be put directly on the website.
I've been fighting for that for years.
Oh, well, so we're there. I just need to go through what needs to be there and take certain contacts off. And I think moving it directly to public will alleviate some of that. So that's just where we've been discussing. I need to go through some of that stuff of what it looks like and what a webmaster can put up. But I think that's partially a barrier, right? Because one thing is the treasurers might need that information and the chair does it. So why does the chair have to go in to say, here's the video for the, right? So that's part that is easy for I just got to do it and figure out which ones are going to go and then speak to webmaster to move them off. And that's also another part with KEV, right? Is that the chair has access, not the treasurer who makes.
So on that, just with this, you've got no opposition for me to moving in the right direction. None. In fact, I welcome not only the input because it's coming from those that know best, but secondly, I think this table here will be great contributors that if we need to change any type of culture or we need to provide support to the school support team, whatever it would be. I think the other thing, respectfully, John, is I think our trustees and our audit committee are now more comfortable allowing for the changes for the right reason, rather than them being unilateral and heavy-handed. If it's coming from the system back to us to create change, I think it'll be better received in the system because we're being asked to provide change.
I was the one, admittedly on the audit committee that originally pushed for the single bank account stuff because of the lack of controls, right? So I fully admit that at the time because that was a fundamental problem for the board. But when it came back to the thing, then we said, well, you know what, we can do the two as long as we've got, as long as you're doing X over here in this manner, it's okay. But that was a problem we had is because it was the Wild West, right? And we need to totally agree with you is respect the autonomy, but also make sure that the right control. I think that's where we need the dialogue back because some people have an opinion both ways, right? And some of us, at least I can wear both hats and say, yep, like we want to make sure councils can do what they got to do. But at the same time is, you have to be protected against the ones that are rogue or when things go awry. So I think if we have those discussions here, and even when you and your staff come and say, look, well, here's what we've seen as examples, that helps provide context for people. So it's not about parents against the board. They can understand, appreciate, and say, okay, well, how do we find that common ground, right? To
Thanks for the time on this, Mr. Chair. One other item, but I will also say I'm a big movie guy. So this is the Jerry Maguire one, which has helped me help you. Okay. And I mean that sincerely, because once the system has the supports it's needed, that's honestly, then that can roll with itself. Ryan can do, we got Ryan and Ryan, you can focus on the parent engagement. and moving forward. But for me, knowing that the system's running itself, to your point, it's more fluid. There's less wasted time. There's consistency of practice, less outliers, and then I can move on to a new priority. So I thank you for that. The only other thing I was going to flag is this Thursday evening. So if the board agenda is out and posted now, it's public. I'll be presenting the revised estimates to the trustees Thursday evening. It's bringing now to fruition the fact that we've been for the last number of years knowing that our reserves are being depleted primarily due to sick leave and other ministry policy pressures. If you're interested, feel free to watch. I'll be presenting early on just at a high level and then the reports in there at a later time. It is a substantial deficit. It is one that we don't have enough reserves to cover. And so we'll be starting the process of working with the Ministry of Recovery Plan. Other boards, in particular the GTA boards, our other colleagues at Toronto Public, Dufferin-Peel Catholic, York Catholic, are in a similar position. They're just maybe all 6 months either ahead or behind each other in terms of which cycle. The other two large boards are also seeing large deficits, but they do still have a few extra reserve dollars left that can cover them for a few more years. But we are working collectively as a GTA community. Different than years ago when boards were in deficits and had to make reductions. Those were board-induced deficits, right? Priority choices, but then you could also pull back and scale back. The deficits now are just being driven, quite frankly, by sick leave, by the inability to deal with school consolidations or small schools or be funded appropriately for them. And as well, there's been some challenges in statutory benefits. So remember the 3 S's: sick leave, school operations or school utilization, and statutory benefits. Those 3 areas are $60 million unfunded pressure. So we're going to have to start working through that.
Chair, one quick comment to that, if you may. I think the gap we've had in the past with the budgets and stuff was using this table to talk about how to engage parents, because what happened is budgets were presented here's CPIC what's going on in the budget, but that's not the purpose of our committee. The committee is to try and figure out how we engage parents to inform them and potentially support any political action that trustees want to do, because parents need to know the reality of what's in front of them, right? Like not sugarcoating it and make it very simple in terms of what's before us, right? So as you kind of say, like, these are 3 things, like it's putting it on the table. May not be anything necessarily people can do about it, but I think with our strategy about how we present that, ask for parents to do something has to be clear. And then you can then either get people that will say, yeah, you know what, if I have to choose between A and B, I'll choose A, right? As then you get some perception from parents, or B, here's what we want you to do about it. Here's how then inform your parent community and council what's going on, because always the asks are always more than what's available, but people also need the reality of what's actually in front of us.
I appreciate that, John. I have a commitment to consultation. I also have a fundamental belief of making sure that it's clear whether it's for awareness, for input, or consultation, collaboration, or formation. I think that's really important. I think the first step was us working in partnership. The messaging that the trustees are going to hear Thursday evening is the other boards that are a little further us in the journey have had success working in partnership with the ministry, because the ministry can go a number of avenues, right? Whether it's a partnership or whether you take an adversarial position, right? Working in partnership, there haven't been fire sales, there haven't been slash and burns, because the province is aware now. Quite frankly, the Treasury Board is aware of the pressures. It's just where they're going to put their money right now. What are they expecting of boards? But now they're starting to see that we really are, it's bumping up and there's really nowhere else to go. So I think we're going to be comfortable taking a position, we'll call it deficit defense or explaining our deficit. We do have the political advocacy committee that's been reconstituted by the board at caucus that I think is the right place for some conversation as well. One around the issues themselves, but secondly around the strategy. I think at this point in time, at least my advice to the board is let's see first the ministry, we're going to start working with them of how they're positioning against us, and then that can determine our response. But right now, I am hearing from the other boards that when there are suggestions or recommendations, there's the opportunity for response, and it has been a good give and take. So we will engage. I think there's going to come a time where we're going to need to your point, John, get feedback from our school communities around if it's got to be this or if it's got to be this, or because we're going to be coming into opportunity costs and decisions. Math's is a great example. If we want to be able to push resources into math and we want to protect our student achievement envelope, that is one of the goals of our budget process. What is it that we've been doing for forever that I know we think is near and dear, but might not be as high yield or as effective or as high a priority as a new direction? We're gonna have to get comfortable marinating that conversation as well, right?
So I'd like to second John's
On
motion.
John's,
Still.
on John's motion. And seconding. Is there anyone, any questions with regards to John's motion, or is anyone opposed to the motion?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Susan.
Appreciate it.
So that motion carries. Now we're gonna look for receipt of presentation. And seconder. Thank you. Anyone opposed? Okay, hearing none, that carries. Okay, we're looking, oh no.
Chair, can I just raise one point under number 9, matters arising out of the minutes? I just want to confirm that all the members have had their email accounts set up and activated. It's a question both to Mr. Peterson and that the board's on their part, and that anyone else here set up so that they can receive, short of new members who arrived today, that they can receive any communications going forward.
Everybody's
Poll.
So is everyone's email working?
No.
Outside of the 2 new members? Right? Eris, yes. Maria, Brian, Rochelle. He says yours is good. Gab. Yours is working. Mine is working.
2 of my 3 are working, yes.
Okay. So John is still, and then Steve and Marcel have to be set up.
Have you cleared the history? Sometimes that makes a difference.
What?
You have like 2 Outlook
I'm
accounts.
learning it.
Oh, no. This is a totally like other issue.
Okay.
Sorry, just to add on to John's point, I think some CPIC reps don't have the emails of their schools for their wards.
You have access to it. Through your email.
But we got that list when we started, like, for example, Manuela sent us a whole list.
Oh, you're talking about the list of your
So
chair,
that
the
list is-
chairs of the CSPC.
That list will be coming out. Ryan is in,
Oh, okay.
in the works of
It's
that.
like the new CPIC reps probably don't have that list, right?
He hasn't sent out that updated list, so that's a kind of work in progress.
But the emails are the same. The emails don't change.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying for the new CPIC reps, they don't have
Our
that.
names, yeah. Yeah, that's something Ryan's,
That's what I've been getting.
he's pulling from his reporting, and he'll create those lists and he'll get them out to the reps.
Okay.
Along with an introductory letter.
See, in some future, it would be resourceful to have that completed and accessible by October or whenever it is. Whenever the
Election
earliest on election night.
No, not when our elections, when their elections.
Of
I
course.
mean, that information, they've had that information now for a while. When the CSPC elections were over.
And see, that's 28 days from the first day of school. So
Yeah,
we're all-
it's probably, what was the conversation? 'Cause I can.
Every ward
Yeah.
gets a list of their new CSPC chairs for their schools.
Yeah.
And the CSPC elections are usually over within the first month of school starting. So that information, the boards have that
The only
information.
part is that we're not confirmed until later.
No, I know, but once the end of October happens, then it's
But we
it's
are-
mid-December.
on a 2-year basis.
Yeah, so forgive me, because that was a process that Manuela used to do that I'm figuring out how to get those done. So we need, Joe, was that the one we were talking about, the letter going out?
Yeah.
So that's coming. And I apologize for it being late. Yeah.
Well, you're also for the volunteers. I
Yeah,
can
you'll
help
get
you
your
out.
school. your share.
You need someone
But
to.
it's, no, we have a letter, and he's working on this. He's working on the list.
I said, if you're looking for volunteers, we can help you out here.
It's all in a
I gotta do consent.
client access thing.
Pass it on.
That move to defer 12A.
Okay, guys.
So we deal with the other.
Okay. So, we're at 12A. So 12A will probably take some time. So do we want
So
to?
I'm gonna move to defer 12A to the next meeting of the committee as one of the central items for next meeting. Because it needs
It needs attention.
Is there someone to second the deferral?
I do.
Okay, Marissa, Jean. And you want to post the? Okay, so this will come out, it'll come to January. Okay, so 12B, parent reaching out grant. I'll do this really quick. And it's already been touched on by CFO Putnam. Again, similar to last year, every school gets allocated $500 per grant funds, right? There is no more application. Okay, so there's no more applying to the ministry. There was no more applying to CPIC, which we went through a few years. And then we were in charge of working with parent engagement and distribution. Every school receives $500 for parent reaching out activities. Now, in addition to that $500 that every school receives, the board receives $1,500 additional dollars. Okay, so what has been our practice in the past? St. Anne's, our virtual school, reached out to principal. We still have a virtual school. Yes, we do. I reached out to
We do. And we will for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I reached out to Principal Russo this morning.
Family.
Just to, you know Principal Russo?
No, Paisan.
And they have, here, sorry. So they have a 360 elementary students and 255 secondary students. Okay, so it is a fairly large size school. But they don't receive any funding like every other school. So every other school in our board gets it's $500 of parent in TIC funding and gets $500 pro grant. So St. Anne's doesn't fall into that category. So again, like our practice has been in the past, is to move those funds and allocate them to St. Anne's. Right? So someone to move that on the floor. Say it.
I
Received. You wanna move, you move the
I moved the
$1,500.
$1,500 to St. Anne.
Have they been using the 1,500 every year?
I believe,
Yeah, they
I
have.
believe Joe and the CSPC, I've already spoken, I've had a conversation with the CSPC chair at St. Anne's to help support that CSPC council. But they have, yes, and again, because of their K to 12, they do have a large range of parent engagement. So I've Jen moving motion to move $1,500 for St. Anne's. Can I have a seconder? Maria? Is there anyone opposed? Okay, seeing none, that carries. Okay, so 12C. So again, as I said earlier, we have new parents who are coming around the table. So for this evening, we are receiving their application. The process is we receive the application, the following month, we basically activate them as a full member. So for 12C is receipt of parent application for Frank Kotza to the Catholic Parent Involvement Committee to fill a vacancy for Ward 5 East. Right, so Franco, you're still on board after all the last 2 hours? Perfect, that's good to hear.
Mr. Chair, I'll move C and D and maybe just give them an opportunity just to introduce themselves, because I think others did in terms of whatever motivates them and how they're doing whatever for just if they wish to take the opportunity of our 2 extra members.
Of course. So Frank, if you have 3 or if you want to just.
So my name again is Franco. I've been on the CSPC for 2 years, first year as secretary and this year as co-chair. I'm a coach for a youth club on the weekends. Just looking forward to getting involved in this, learning as much as I can. Yep.
Hello, everyone. I'm Marcel Paul. I was part of a different school board a few years ago. So we kind of had the pick and programs done in August. And we did have a lot of meetings as well. So I was the chair of the other board that my daughter was part of for 4 years. And then now with this Catholic school board, I've been co-chair, secretary, member at large. Now I'm the Equity and Diversity Committee chair. I do a lot of fundraising, helping with the school. PIAC, so that's the Public Engagement Committee. I was speaker for that in terms of parent councils and fundraising, and just love being a part of the school and helping the school committee and looking for a change and motivating the children and parents.
Okay, so I have John as a movie, I have a seconder. Gabrielle. And anyone opposed? Okay, seeing none, that carries. So 12E, we're filling a vacant executive position. We didn't do this in November. We have a position called past chair. To be that executive position, we would have had to have been a chair at CPIC. So that's basically the big criteria. So John Del Grande was a former chair to CPIC. We were looking to fill this role with himself. So if I have someone that wants to nominate.
I will nominate John.
And that's the seconder. John, you accept the nomination?
Yes, I don't think anyone else qualifies, right?
I won't ask for additional.
I can bring my old sign here and change it to past chair. So to show you what happened is I stuffed all this stuff in the closet at the very last meeting we had before we went to COVID lockdown.
March of 2020.
Yeah, the last meetings here is March of 2020. And
that's the time capsule.
and all the names of people who were here. There's not much is left.
So I'm gonna just motion to close nominations. 2. Yeah, 1, 2.
All in favor?
Okay, anyone opposed? Here then, John. Welcome to the past. Item 13A is the AFL parent member nomination report. So that's on your addendum. See, that's on the loose sheet. I'll go that quickly. This process actually went very well. I was very pleased with how quick we were able to get it done, put it out there, and the awareness about it, and the number of applications that we received. So I'll give you a high level of what I wrote. We received 12 applicants for this role, the AFL parent position, and all 12 were excellent candidates. They all brought numerous strengths to the role. And it really challenged the committee to kind of break it down and find the best fit for this position. So you can see it was myself, Jennifer, and Gus were on the subcommittee, and we had Superintendent Ryan Pearson who assisted us. Again, something that they do at this superintendent role in terms of evaluating and using certain metrics in terms of finding the best fit. Assist in that. Okay, so at the end of the day, when the dust settled, we unanimously chose Gabriella Perloni as our TCDSB parent member for the. We feel with her background, this is perfect fit for AFL. She's going to make a huge impact. Right, I told her this, you represent all the parents across the board, and she didn't flinch. She just kind of. And in addition, I did reach out to all the other applicants and let them know that they weren't chosen. I did leave it open. Some actually candidates had criteria for CPIC, so I did offer them that position, and others I offered them the link to our Toronto Catholic District School Board parent positions, right? We always have parent positions coming up on different advisory committees throughout our board, so I'll be sure to let those parents know that that's an opportunity for them. Any questions? Can I get a receipt of the subcommittee report? Jen and a seconder. All right. Anyone opposed? None? That carries. Thank you. So 15A is our
I'll try to be quick. A lot of what I was going to discuss, we talked about earlier. So thanks everybody for being here tonight and your continued commitment to parent engagement. Moving into December, it's the month of charity. So speaking of charity, it was actually really great to see the turnout from this table at the Angel Foundation for Learning Gala, which was a fantastic night. You were the best looking group there, and I'm not just saying that. Okay, maybe a little bit, but you were the best looking group there, and staff looked like the most tired group there. They had a wonderful time meeting all of you. I know you met many of my colleagues and during that evening. So thank you for making the efforts to come out to that event, and the money goes directly back into student nutrition programs and all of the amazing things that the Angel Foundation for Learning does. Congratulations to Gabriella. Just to note, I did sit on that process just to help guide it as best possible, did not vote on anything. I was extremely impressed with the discussion around the table, with the phenomenal candidates who came forward from our parent group. It really is quite exciting to see such engagement of parents out there specifically coming forward for a volunteer position such as this. And we're very happy that you were selected. We continue to work with CFO Putnam. I'm glad he was here tonight to build out support services for CSBCs. And I think we kind of talked about that a lot, and all of those processes are evolving. We're kind of at a rebuilding year where we're looking at, as best we can, supporting all CSBCs, CPIC, removing as many potential barriers as possible as we move forward, and kind of rethinking the way we do things here around parent engagement and at Toronto Catholic. And our focus is going to be not spending the money, but doing great things for parents to engage them with the money that we have. So that has been a strong focus around the Education Council table, which is really a superintendent meeting that happens here all day on Mondays, as well as permeating that messaging out to principals to support them as best as possible. We are taking advantage of our virtual kind of systems, and we've done 2 virtual evenings for chairs and continue to do more so as we go we won't be doing it in December, but as we move forward into January, February, March, and those will be some of the things that CFO Putnam's group and myself can look at to help get the messaging out to chairs. So that's basically where we are. I did talk about the CSBC annual activity report. Things are doing well and on a right trend, but we always look for 100% completion. So that will be the goals going forward. Looking forward to next year. January will be the month of courage. And really, we just want to wish everybody a happy new year and a Merry Christmas. And I think we all deserve, as parents, at least a little bit of downtime. I hope you're going to be getting that going into, the break is 2 weeks away, but hopefully we'll all get some time to spend with our little ones and our families during Christmas. So that's pretty much it for me, everybody. Any questions?
No. So to proceed. Seconder. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that carries. Thank you, Ryan, for that. 16A is our update by Trustee Lepre.
So November 27th, we had caucus. I was re-elected to sit at this table, very exciting. But Trustee Di Domenico is now the vice chair of our board, so we elected Trustee D'Amico as the alternate. So hopefully he'll be in. I've asked him to come into the next meeting actually because I have an appointment, so I think that he'll try to come into the next meeting. There's a lot that was said today that I was going to say in my report. I mean, Kimberly Dixon really went through a lot of it, and Mr. Putnam as well. So thank you for shaving off a good 20 minutes of my report. December 7th, we had a whole bunch of motions that are going to go to OCSTA from the board. Some of the recommendations on mental health, electric school buses, international language program, the board improvement and equity plan, which we touched on a little bit. Then we had the D'Amico Day of Kindness and Love, audited financial statements, which if you have any questions, please direct them to Mr. Putnam because he's here. And I just want to jump on something that John had mentioned before about this group being, really a force, a driving force on things that we could do, like in terms of activism. And I'm not sure if any of you read some of the communications, one communication that came to student achievement last week from the Ministry of Education, from Kate Mansour-Smith. And I'm going to be really careful with the words that I use, so I'll just allow you to read it at your pace, but it's about childcare spaces in schools, about building childcares. And there's some big problems that are coming our way. So if there's ever a time for advocacy, it's now. And the reason why I'm very careful with my words is I'm still not sure what is embargoed and what isn't. And I don't want to cross any lines, but I think that it has been publicly said that it doesn't look like the 20 childcare spaces that our board was. Are delayed at this point, and I'm putting it in quotation marks. So if there's any time for advocacy, it's now with the childcare. Yes. Childcare
Facilities?
So there will be a communication coming up from Shazia's.
Building on additional physical space onto a school for that, or
building on it.
using what is already existing in the school, because I can tell you in our school, we don't even have room for our students, let alone,
I think it's both.
Okay.
So that whole thing is being delayed, is what you're saying? Is that what is that what you're sharing?
Choose your words carefully.
I am. I'm trying to think.
It's
in my
just,
head right
it's
now.
just
I
delayed.
want to understand.
It's
I'm
just
not trying to
delayed
put
right
you in a
now.
position.
Where there have been childcare projects announced over the last 5 years, those are presently delayed while boards work with the ministry. And there will be central communication coming from our chief of communications, our two principals to CSPCs and to parents of the affected communities.
Yes.
So for schools that had imminent construction about to start for the expansion of the facilities together with other additions to the school, would that interrupt the entire project, part of the project? Not at all, but the use of the space will be interrupted?
The projects are delayed.
Okay, we got it.
I'll give you the, often we ask the ministry, we get the answers, when can we expect soon? In this case, I think what trustee LaPretti is offering is that the letter indicates that the projects are being delayed while the ability to fully fund them. It's a discussion.
Hang on.
Okay.
Sorry, question. How can we get more information about that?
So Shazia Vlahos is going to be sending out a communication, but this has been like on local news sites. I see that there's been a lot of Toronto Star has been writing a lot of articles about it. So if you want to get some additional information, you can look up the Star articles that have come out, which are pretty accurate, I would say. And then Shazia Vlahos will be putting out something formal, official in the next couple of days, I'd say. I'd say imminently she'll be sending them out.
Okay. Sorry. Can I ask a question? Hold on. Aaron, did you have a question? Did you raise your? No? Okay.
Question for you, trustee. On the playground and stuff issues that were supposed to be built this past summer, a lot of the projects got delayed without proper communication and stuff, which deflated a lot of the parent council's thing about stuff being built and fundraising they did to just like disappear in the ether. And as Mr. Financial knows, prices of everything have gone up, right? So now the cost of increase, like what is the board's response to making sure that these projects actually happen? Because it's great when the trustees announce money and stuff happen. When if stuff can happen, or doesn't happen on time, it's pointless because we just build up expectations and stuff that we can't deliver on. So I guess what's the response, I guess, for any new playground funding? I don't think there might be any because of the deficit, but let's assume if there was or was not, how do we actually get the other stuff in the pipeline finished for this next summer?
Has there been any communication with your local schools on
We've not received it.
Dates.
Zilch. So wait, like in our, I'm using the example, like, I'll use a particular school, but if it speaks for the rest is, we heard zilch, we had to push and ask for questions until we went to the trustee, then they came back and said X, Y, Z, and then it went silent. But the issue is not, I'm looking at my school, but holistically, because that's the feedback we've been hearing from a lot of schools was
2 years
like
delay.
playground money, do things, do work, and then just into the ether, like nothing happens, right? So I don't think it's that we don't have the money. I don't know if it's the resources to make it happen.
I'm gonna defer to my colleague here, Mr. Putnam.
I might have saved you 20, but it took me 40 to say it. Couple of things briefly on that. Communication has been feedback we have received as well. At the senior team level, our trustees hold us to account as well when they hear feedback like you're providing now. We have dedicated Ms. Blahouse, she's our chief of communications, has now dedicated an individual to work specifically with the business side and actually more specifically with Associate Director Boyce and the capital and the renewal and construction side. Everything from the good news to the updates. I think that's an important element. The second piece is we unfortunately lost one of our two. We had two really strong, keen up-and-comers leading that portfolio. One of them had a great opportunity to go into private practice with a firm. So, of course, we wish her the best, but that delayed it right in sort of prime time. And then lastly, the province has instituted now that on our renewal program, so that's all our major renovations and retrofits, that money normally would just roll in perpetuity and you complete as many projects as you can. They've now put an expiring in for 2025 and 2026. There's end dates. And so we've had to push a lot of the team towards doubling down on getting all that critical work done, which means I'll call it non-essential, not necessarily non-important projects may have been delayed. Associate Director Boyce, I think, is hearing the feedback loud and clear on all.
So let me turn that into the example I gave you prior to about the autonomy issue, right?
Yeah.
So with the first playground thing, a school went ahead and did it.
Yeah.
Got in trouble, it didn't follow the process, but it got done on budget, on time. This round had schools that had the capability to follow a process that it was getting 3 quotes, whatever it is, could have been done and delivered. By the time the board wasted time doing its thing because people weren't there. So there's some projects that you can't do because you need, there's infrastructure and other things. There's plenty of others that were unnecessarily delayed because schools weren't given the parameters and the autonomy to do what they had to do. Because at least in a school, it could have been done, delivered, the contractor was ready to go, the price was there, the rules were followed, and they were told you can't do anything, right? So this is where that thing around the flexibility versus the control comes in place, because in these cases now we've lost things, the school committee didn't get their stuff. It's going to cost us 20% more to do it now the next time around. And then you've got angry parents and school communities to say, like, what the, right? So, right, it doesn't work in all cases, but this is kind of where like the thing is like, people are not wearing their alternative hats to say, shit happens, get it? But how can we, allow some things to continue, right? And I get there's going to be winners and losers because not everything can follow that path, but when you get nothing versus something would have been a better result, right? So just
I think that's good feedback.
my candid feedback on using that as an example, right?
Consistent feedback that we've been receiving. I don't think you'll ever find again when we'll commission. We do to commission the work. I think it's more capacity and focus. I think our trustees are more comfortable now with us doubling down to bring in staff that we need to support, whether it's contract, project management, whatever it would be. In the past, there was some delicacy using external to help us deliver more quickly as well. Derek's looking at all of that. It's very Associate Director Boyce. Yeah, I don't think you'll ever find us getting to the point of commissioning local projects being undertaken at the local level. And I would say those that would go ahead in the past that might have had ask for forgiveness instead of permission type of approach. There could be other privileges that could be revoked as well. It's not intended to get in the way of progress, but I think we need to let Associate Director Boyce, ultimately he's accountable back to the trustees for the model. We're hearing feedback, but it's consistent feedback that's been coming back. And it's not falling on deaf ears, but again, it's going to take a little bit of time and patience. I think the biggest challenge, respectively, I'll turn it back to Trustee, right at your time, is the communication element. At a minimum, that's got to be strengthened. I think Derek's committed to that. You've heard him say that. So.
Yeah, 100%. But I just want to let you know that none of my projects were done in my board last time. Like none of them had zero. I worked with every single one of my schools, and I carry this book around with me. Everything goes in my book, like everything, in QAO scores to like the
money that's been allocated to any issues. And you stay in my book until and your dad actually taught me this. You stay in the book until it's resolved and then you get waited out. That being said, though, they have been, so I got all my information. I was able to get in touch with the appropriate people at the board. And I see projects moving slowly, but they're moving in my ward. But I would tell you to, not you, but I would tell parents to get in touch with their trustees, communicate with the trustees so that they're aware, because sometimes the trustees aren't even aware. Like, sometimes we have no idea unless we have that direct communication. So reach out to the trustee, let them know what schools are still waiting and try to work with them. I mean, that's.
Yep, that's good advice.
Yeah, because I think parents are sick of their kids playing in dirt.
No, I could say
And-
that
and
I.
this is all we hear all the time. It's like, why is my child coming home covered in dirt?
I have worked with.
Because they're
one
sitting
of
there and they're
the-
picking dirt up.
Because they're play.
No, because there's nothing else to play with.
May I ask a quick question?
My 2 cents.
What is the main reason that the project is delayed if the school has the means to keep going?
So financial,
Yes, financially.
it is a matter of making sure that we can support it with proper central oversight. It's a capacity issue.
Translated. Translated.
In other words, the reality is that we still need to coordinate and have staff from our facilities team
Mhm.
oversee the delivery of the project. We can't, the model could be, there are certain communities that even have contractors as parents, et cetera. Around that,
Mhm.
but we still have to prioritize it in terms of the work that's done by the central office and support it. So it is getting kind of jammed up in priorities. We've had, someone really good leave. That's not an excuse. It's just, it's an answer. So yeah, there's frustration out there because this program is, I think, really important because it has after hours and community benefits as well, a lot of it, right? It's not just for the daytime, it's impacting students. So that feedback, this is consistent feedback. There's nothing we're hearing tonight. It just reinforces, to use your word from earlier, Jennifer, just reinforcing the messaging that is coming back. But if your individual school hasn't had communication, please, it's not just necessarily the trustee, but make sure that your principal is working with your ASO, because that's the network back to Associate Director Boyce as well. And otherwise, we're just providing annual reports on certain metrics back to the trustees. So we'll get there. Last thing I can say is that program, thankfully, is protected. It's separate from our operating budget where our deficit sits. So we are funding it out of our renewal, our capital program. It's not a lot, but I think the intention for the trustees is to continue doing it. But there's no point adding another round of projects until we've cleared what's in arrears.
100%.
And the next wave of funding might actually need to be, to your point, dealing with some of the inflation that we're going to see on the projects.
You said there's an expiry date on that? 25,
Sorry,
26?
at a board level, like the big money we get to do like roofs and windows and
Oh.
stairwells and paving, they're gonna actually just start saying, look, you've got to use it, because boards have just been rolling for far too long. But one of the challenges we're having is there's not a recognition that during COVID, basically everything shut down. Right? And now to your point as well, the supply chain, price points, but also delivery times are 3 to 6 months for things that used to be 6 weeks. Thank you.
Can I get someone to move receipt? Jen? Seconder? Ria? Anyone opposed? None? Okay. Received. Okay, 17A is parent members community member report. So Ward 3 update. Okay, so last month I was here and I asked for some money to do an event in Ward 3. So myself and Trustee LaPretti went to James Cardinal Lugugan that night. We met with about 25 parents, including 4 CPIC representatives. It was good for the food.
And it came under budget.
We came way under budget, so it was a really well-received night. We had representation from all our schools, I believe, except for one. We had secondary schools there, even though it was, I'm an elementary ward rep, because we still have that vacancy in secondary west, so we had those chairs there. We're hoping that one of them is actually going to join the committee. We covered several topics. that are just, you can see in the report. And to John's point, yes, we did come in the budget. I only spent $567.96 of the 1,000 that was approved. So just so everyone wonders, that when I submit my expenses, I will only be paid for those funds. Those extra money, that just stays in the account. Right?
In the CPIC funds, right?
Yeah, it just stays.
Even though we approved the 1,000?
Yeah, so in the motion, it was up to 1,000. Right?
Oh, okay.
So it was a really good night. And again, it's something that myself and Ida have been working on for a long time in Ward 3, doing a lot of intake questions. And basically the conversation that night that we had was based on a lot of questions that were coming from the different CSPCs. So we tried to hit as many of those. And then again, I had support from CPIC reps. So it was
I think the point is that this is something that can be replicated for any of the reps, right? So working with your trustee or other stuff, if there's a proposal that you want to have, like that, just to bring it forward so that we can approve those kinds of money so you can do your events.
My question is, how much in advance do we bring these proposals forward? Like, do we have to do it months in advance and say, hey, we want to do this for Ward?
But you have to bring the motion at a board meeting. So you would want to do it, you would want to time it. You know all the meeting dates, right? So if you're looking to plan something in your ward, you work with that and then you can bring it. You know, in our case, I brought it in that short timeline because we were at the beginning of our year. Again, going forward, you can kind of see if it's something you want to do later on. You can do it sooner than later, or you can closer to the date.
But let's say we get the motion approved, how fast do we have to use those funds?
Again, in your motion, you would probably put a timeline. In the motion, you would put a date and a timeline that those funds are going to get used. Usually, our motions don't carry over to the next school year. So usually within that term is the kind of
I'd like to table a motion that right now here, we agree to an amount per ward and that we vote on it now so that it doesn't delay the preparation, the organization of these meetings and that these meetings be completed by the end of the school year. So June 28th of 2023. So did I word that properly or do I need to do it formally in some other way, shape or form? So that's
They're basically saying you want to.
I would like for us-
Pre-allocation.
let's pre-allocate the funds now. For example, I know that Ward 2 will be having that meeting in January. So perhaps over the holidays, other wards are so inclined and inspired to come up with something. So why wait to the next meeting and to the next meeting? So we have
So
the funds.
again, like I said, in the past, $1,000 was that.
We did do that.
So let's do 1,000.
Here's a question to your motion. What if that CPIC rep doesn't use those funds in that?
It just stay in the, it just
just
stay in the
stays.
pot.
Doesn't
Doesn't go anywhere.
It's basically an allocation.
that board?
The money doesn't come out. The money's there. Like the
Right, what
money.
I'm saying is if we table and we approve the motion and we say, okay, so and so $1,000 for Ward 8 or $1,000 for Ward 7. But let's say Ward 8 hasn't used that $1,000 for that year.
Yep.
Can it roll over to the next year? Or do we have to just do it?
So that motion, the motion goes away. We would have to revisit that motion the following year. And again, this is something we've done in the past. We've allocated the funds at the beginning of the year. It was probably something that budget and priority didn't have an opportunity to speak before this meeting, but it probably would have been a conversation at that table to allocate those funds. Now, again, we have 15 elementary, we have 3 secondary, right? Even when we're doing this, like I said, in Ward 3, we incorporated the secondary with the elementary. So every ward rep will do it at their personal spin on it. Yes, Maria.
I have 4 wards.
Yeah.
So would I get like 4,000?
No, you would.
Just like
you-
1,000.
You have a cluster.
A
so you-
cluster, right?
Yeah, it would still, you would invite, because even though your region is over 4 wards, you have the same amount of schools as any one individual has in their ward.
Okay, I see.
Okay, so it would go over. So again, we have 15 elementary and 3 secondary, so that's 18. So in essence, we would be allocating $18,000, well, $17,000 because Ward 3 already did it. Or we'll just say 18,000 just to, that would be the total of this motion by June
Could I add an
That's my
addendum
motion.
to the motion? Pass this on to all the CSPCs of these boards, that this motion, that this amount has been approved.
It doesn't actually have, so, okay, sorry, go ahead.
Well, the whole point is for you as a CPIC rep to create something for the CSPCs, not to let them know that this money is there. I mean, the idea is for you.
It's meant for a CPIC event that you're co-hosting.
And sometimes what happens is CSPC has to invite a CPIC rep to their CSPC council meetings.
Yes,
And
but
stuff that- and sometimes it's hard to pass the information down. Hey, there's this $1,000, come to our CPIC event for Ward 8. I'm just saying, sometimes as a CPIC rep, you're not invited to all CSPC meetings and these other schools in that particular ward. So it's hard for us as CPIC reps.
I'll give you a scenario, because you have email access, right? So if you're planning an event with your trustee or whatever you think you want to do, you lay out the budget, pick a timeline that you think works, then you can, and the board will help to promote that to those schools so they will get the information. So you don't have to go ask their permission or show up at their meeting. Like, there's lots of communication channels you can use, but it's about you as the rep organizing it, right? Because you got like people, logistics, food, like all that stuff, or what you're gonna do. Then the invites, there's lots of facilities to get that message out. But the first aspect is, what do you want to do when? Yeah. If you do talk to some local CSPC chair, maybe they can help with ideas, but it's got to be a CPIC functioned event where, as a CPIC rep, you're running it because you're responsible for it.
Also, I can say this as like, you know, as lead for conferences and events, I'm happy to work together with Joe, with Ida, and come up with a model, like a template that would support everyone so that you're not left to your own devices to reinvent the wheel, to come up with ideas, to even come up with, you know, communications, posts for social, whatever it might be. So work together with digital to create those communications. But that way, so that the focus is on engagement and not trying to hone your skills on perhaps the actual creation of the event, so that we can have it ready to go by the beginning of the new year. Ours will take place in January. So everyone is invited if you didn't get a chance to come to Ward 3s. But then that way we can support each other and focus on moving forward with the communication, you know, rather than overcoming the barriers to the communication. So. So my motion
You add
stands.
your motion and say that the events coordinator will put together a template for use of.
What I just said will be added to my motion. I don't know, what difference does it make? I'm gonna do it.
Well, the motion, and you really have to do it.
I'm really gonna do it. I'm live on to the world.
Do you have it ready by?
By our meeting. So, sorry, by our event, which will be by the end of January. So when's our meeting in January?
So it's gonna be ready by the 17th?
The 15th.
The 15th? Yeah, I commit to having it ready by the 15th for our next meeting. A
Put the
template.
motion.
Don't ask me any more questions or else it's gonna be. That's my motion. Is anyone seconding it?
To allocate $1,000 per.
Yeah, I know.
To allocate $1,000 per elementary ward, a secondary cluster to be used for ward or ward cluster events.
Putting my calendar.
1 and 2, template to be created by events. That's moved by Gabriella and a seconder. She doesn't have a vote yet because we just.
You don't have a vote yet.
Is there anyone opposed?
Clarification, Ms. Gabriela, the subcommittee is conference and events subcommittee, right?
Conference and event subcommittee.
And us, communication and parent resource subcommittee with Ms. Leticia and Brian.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. So anyone opposed? Okay, so hearing none, that motion carries. I'm just gonna go back now to receipt of the ward report. Jen? And a seconder? Anyone opposed? Hearing none, seeing none, that carries as well. 17B is the Ontario Association of Parents of Catholic Education Toronto update. Our community rep has sent his regrets. Right, so the report is there. So we can just motion to receive, right? Everyone, hopefully everyone has had an opportunity to read it. If you don't, you can read it now. So can we just move someone to receive? Jen? And Maria? Changing it up. Anyone opposed? Okay, hearing none, that carries as well. So no updates, 18, no 19, 20. So before we call for adjournment, I do want to say thank you to everyone. It's been a long meeting. We've had a lot of great conversations. I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Get some well-deserved rest, right? We obviously, the event coordinator has set everyone on a path, plan work for the new year. So can I get adjournment? Ben, Gabriella. Anyone opposed? None? Okay. Thank you, everyone.
And Miguel, is the streaming done, Miguel?